is Puritans Radio. It's not just about the football.
Now, Peter Jones on Puritans Radio. Your station, your team, your community.
Yes, good morning universe, good morning Banbury, good morning everybody. I know we've got people all over the world listening this morning. It's a really cold, well it's not cold anymore, we've warmed the studio up. In front of me I've got from Travel Counsellors our usual guest Dawn Gascoigne and Lindsey Aspinall. Good morning.
Morning.
And they brought along with them Sue Marchant. Yes, I got that right. Sue, good morning.
Good morning.
And we're going to be chatting to Sue again a little bit later, but we'll start with Dawn and Lindsey in the exciting world of travel. Lindsey's changed her photograph, a fabulous photograph on the back of a boat.
Yeah, I went on a cruise.
Was that so you could lean over and...
Ship. Yeah. It was better than a boat. It was.
Yeah.
I went on the MSC ship on the 18th of October for 4 nights with a few more gold travel counsellors. So
Was that is that one of the huge, big ships?
Yes, it was very big.
How many people on that?
I believe there was 3,000 passengers.
Wow.
Total.
And were they all
Cluster.
travel counsellors?
No. There was about 80 travel counsellors, the rest holiday makers. So we got on the ship in Genoa and then sailed to Barcelona, a day in Barcelona, and then sailed to Parma and had 2 days in Parma, and then sailed to Marseille and then flew home from Marseille.
And did you have dinner at the captain's table?
Yes, on the Saturday night we had a gala night, which was a posh.
Best frock.
Actually see the captain, but yeah.
Oh, you were at his table.
Hopefully he was sailing a ship. Hopefully I was concentrated.
Tell me, what's Marseille? I'm off hopefully in the new year to Marseille. What's Marseille like?
Well, to be fair, we only saw the dock because we disembarked there and got on the transfer coach to go to the airport. So I'm sorry to say I didn't really see much of Marseille.
It's supposed to be really dangerous and dodgy and seedy, a bit like Banbury, really.
Oh, you'll enjoy that then, Peter.
What I saw was, let us know.
And of all the places you stopped at, did you go on all the excursions and things?
We got off in Parma and did a mountain bike excursion, which was, Parma was beautiful.
I'd have stayed on the boat, yeah. Ship.
I've only ever flown into Parma and gone off to a holiday resort, so
Yeah.
it was such a beautiful city. I would definitely go back for a city break, because there's a massive cathedral. It's
I've done a city break there. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really pretty. In Barcelona, unfortunately, it was absolutely torrential rain. The one day of the year they had rain was the day we were there, so we didn't get off. It was just too wet. So we just had a day on the ship.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was really good. We had a really good time.
Now, those of you that listen to the show regularly will think, well, something odd. Dawn's very quiet this morning. Not very well, are we?
I'm so rarely not very well, but yeah, just not feeling quite tip-top this morning for some reason.
So what have we been? Not the what's made you well. What's been exciting happening in the world of travel counsellors for you this last?
Oh goodness, we're just flat out busy as ever. Luckily, the last month since we last spoke, there's been no major worldwide catastrophes, but we are touching wood so that we're not encouraging it to happen. Really just looking after clients, making sure that everything's okay. We did have a situation with a client in Hong Kong about a week or so ago, where they arrived and the hotel where they'd been on a tour, and they'd arrived at a hotel which wasn't what they were expecting, so that needed sorting out. However, we've had an email from them since they've got back just to say how amazing we were, and the fact that by the time they'd sent the message through, within 3 hours they were in a different hotel and everything was tickety-boo. So again, just really endorses having a travel counsellor at the end of the email, phone, whatever.
Bit of general advice for folks who are listening. You may be able to answer. Drugs. Prescribed drugs.
Yeah.
I once got attacked by a sniffer dog in Italy for some blood pressure tablets, but there's this woman I've forgotten which country it is now, who is it Egypt I think she's gone to, or somewhere, and she'd got 360 tramadol with her that had been prescribed because she gets a bad back, but she's been arrested and possibly facing the death sentence. I've forgotten which country it is now.
Did she? I would say with that, it would depend whether they're in hand luggage or whether they're in a hold. Obviously, you need whatever you need for travelling. You'd need a letter from your doctor, and that would be this is too general, but dependent on what it was, you can then carry that obviously on the aircraft because it's needed to be used throughout your journey. However, the rest of your medication, although again there's arguments against this because what if your case goes astray, but in theory should be in the hold because it's not needed whilst you're travelling.
And again, yeah, I mean, I when I go, I wrap each day's up in a little bit of cling film, so I'm only taking what I actually need. But 360 tramadol for what was probably a long weekend is a bit excessive.
And also, we also, do encourage people to take copies of
your
prescriptions so that if they need to get it when they arrive in the relevant country, that they can.
And try and leave it in its original box with the ingredients and all of that in that if they need. Exactly, yeah. So you don't get too many questions.
That's pretty bonkers, really, isn't it? I'm not suggesting that she deserved that or was doing anything she shouldn't be doing, but it does seem a little bit excessive. So, it's just common sense, I think, really. Good.
And what's ahead? You mentioned Joanna Lumley.
Ooh. This Friday we've got this weekend we've got our annual Travel Counsellors conference in Manchester, which is always a fab weekend. And we've just found out that one of the motivational speakers is Joanna Lumley. So we'll see. There's probably another 2 that we don't know of.
Yeah.
And the entertainment on the Saturday night is always a big secret and who it's going to be. So we'll let you know next time.
That's one of the things I missed when I was in the world of the really exciting world of life insurance. We used to have conferences at Wembley and the funniest person I've ever heard. Because they have celebrity compos, don't it? Was Bob Monkhouse.
Oh yeah, he's so
and live he was so
so witty and very quick.
All he did was ask somebody in the audience, "Oh, have you got a copy of today's paper?" And somebody had, and every story he made was a joke from what was.
Yeah, he was exceptionally clever gentleman, wasn't he?
But then we used to they used to wheel people out like Damon Hill and Chris Boardman the site, which to a poor boy from Warwick was good fun.
Yeah, well,
so,
we have Vernon Kay.
We do.
Do they? Yeah, they don't play. Is it Vernon Kay that does where you have all the girls and you switch the lights on and off? That is Vernon.
No, you're thinking of Paddy McGuinness.
Oh, Paddy McGuinness. Yeah, no, Vernon Kay does. What's the other thing called?
I don't.
Family Fortunes.
That's it, Family Fortunes. Yeah. Because they sometimes, again, the conferences I went on, they used to recreate these games on the.
Yeah, they do. We do have some of that. I think it's. For us, believe it or not, obviously Lindsey and I come in here every month. But
do you know that's by the way, it's a year today that you first came in.
I did note that actually. Yeah, we're still here, aren't we? Peter?
Yeah,
which is really impressive.
Well, I take that as I'm actually very grateful. Yeah.
But Lindsey and I actually don't spend really any quality time together. When we are together, we are working. We do networking and things.
You're always
like
going on holiday, or you've got.
It's always separate. Obviously, for covering the business, it's always separately. So this particular weekend is the only weekend or only time we get to spend that amount of time together.
But you went on one a couple of weeks ago, Birmingham, didn't you? Or it's not a year since you.
No, we had a mini conference. April. That's just a day.
Yeah. Have you ever been on a holiday together?
No, we wouldn't, just simply because of business now.
Do you fight over? Well, no, you'd never fight, but
no, we don't have.
What happens if something come in that you both want to go on? You put your name in a hat? Or?
No, I would. In all fairness, I would just say, Lindsey, go. We'd never have anything like that. It would not be an issue. And if we did actually really both want to go, we would find somebody to cover the business, or we'd still work while we were away if it was that. A bit like this weekend.
I bet you do though. You're always there. I bet even when you're on these. Yeah.
Oh yeah, goodness, yeah. Well, we both crossed over holidays in October because I was away for the half term and Lindsey was on the Gold Conference. So we had 3 days where we were both not in the office, and I have to say, I didn't like it one little bit. It's not. We couldn't avoid it.
But we did have someone covering us, so if in an emergency we would have backup. But we did it
anyway.
I did some work in Barcelona when it was
wet.
I
did some work in Cyprus when it was not wet.
If you ever get one that you sort of neither of you can go on and you want to volunteer,
it doesn't work like that. We've had lots of people that have offered to come in our suitcases or take our places.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's
so
not
do you
quite
get
that
to take
simple.
your families?
No,
some of them
not on
do.
educationals.
Gosh.
Only on gold trip or conference, but not on educational.
I took, when I went to Aphrodite in Cyprus, I took a friend. It's very, very rare that you can.
Yeah.
But you don't normally.
I get
It is work. I know
Yeah.
it is seemingly not, but it is.
I'm envious. I'm off next Saturday. Is it this Saturday? Next Saturday I'm off for 2 days too. Really exciting, to Chambray, just the other side of Calais.
Yeah.
They're opening a new tank museum. They've dug up this tank on the beach.
wow.
Believe it or not, it's called Deborah, and I'll say that before she comes in. I've been asked to be an interpreter for a member of the royal family.
Oh, wow.
And I've just broken the official Secrets Act.
Oh dear. Oh
No,
dear.
it's-
We haven't got very many listeners this morning.
But no, so this is, I haven't, last year was a terrific year for me for trips.
Yeah.
This year I've been on 3 and they've all been in Calais. It's
Yeah,
just,
but it's just, sometimes it's just the way it goes, isn't it?
mind you, should have seen the places I've been eating out recently.
Absolutely.
Anyway, let's move on. You've brought Sue Marchant in again. Sue, I
Yeah.
think, would you mind coming a bit closer to the microphone, Sue? Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
I think it's about 6 months since you last came in. So
Yeah,
if
probably in the
you want to
spring, yeah.
introduce Sue again, because I'm sure there are folks that didn't hear her.
This is Dr. Sue Marchant, who has, apart from her day job, has a English heritage website. So for anything English,
Well, English history, English food,
everything you need to know.
Mhm.
meandering around the country and looking at nice things, really.
And so don't spend a lot of time in Banbury then.
Will you leave Banbury alone? We adore Banbury.
There is nothing wrong. In fact, I'm quite excited because we've got coming in later on. Have you seen? We've got a new pub in a micropub, and they've also revamped the Coach and Horses in
Yes.
Butcher's Row.
Yes.
A couple of friends of mine from Ilmington, Red
Yeah.
Line at Ilmington. So that's going to be quite.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong in Banbury.
There is not. It's fabulous.
If anybody took seriously what I said about Banbury, I'd have been lynched years ago.
Yeah, I've got to say it.
I've had 50 years here. I love it. Right, let's move on. Because last time you'd Dawn and Lindsay had arranged a trip.
Yes, we were
To Japan or somewhere?
Yes, we just come back from Japan from a absolutely fantastic trip that Dawn and Lindsay helped us organise, and we're planning to go back. Even though initially when we returned, my husband was okay. We've done Japan now, and now we're thinking, oh no, let's do that.
There's
Let's
plenty
do that
more.
again.
Yeah,
There's
it's a
lots of stuff we haven't seen yet. So, and I've been saying to Dawn and Lindsay, well, we've got a couple of years to sort out exactly where we want to go, because so one of the ideas is to start in the snow up in the north, go skiing, and then literally take the train all the way south and end up on a tropical beach, because in Japan you can do that. So.
Yeah, amazing.
You can do that in Spain. You can sunbathe and then go up into
I
the
suppose that's
sea air,
true,
and
yeah.
you can ski and sunbathe
Yeah.
on the same day. Just a quick question before we come back. Japan, the street signs and everything, are they in Japanese and in English, or just in Japanese?
In most cases, in both. Certainly in Tokyo, you won't have a problem. There are big tourist maps on the big street corners where they're actually in English, in German, and French, pointing out exactly where you are. When you get out of Tokyo, it gets a little bit hazy, and street signs. The big roads tend to be labelled in both in Kana and in English. The smaller ones, no, but they've also got
It'd be difficult if you were hiring a car then, yeah.
They've also got a very weird system of how they number their roads and their apartment buildings and stuff like that. So I wouldn't want to have to find somebody in Japan just from their address, because I would get hopelessly lost.
You can do that in Wales. I mean, there are parts of Wales where the Welsh now,
Yeah.
us Welsh, we don't even put English signs on. I've got a very, very small smattering of Welsh, nothing specific. And I was driving along and I couldn't understand why all these villages had the same name, so I stopped and translated it, and it was slow children crossing. So where are we going to? Where is essentially England and Travel Counsellors going to overlap this year? I mean, do you work with corporates, or is it purely individuals? Or
We do work with some corporates, but generally speaking it's leisure, so it's individuals and holidays, which is our strength really, and probably more of our passion, I would say. But to be honest with you, we're always very supportive of any local business, and certainly if there's a crossover within our industry, we're very, very happy to encourage other business. So it's not a case of, that's ours. We don't work like that at all. So if there's something that crosses over, or we feel that Sue can help add value and vice versa, then we would.
Do folks
Yeah.
actually do come to you right at the very beginning? For example, would somebody ring, Dawn, Lindsay, I'm thinking of going to El Salvador, and boomf, they just they just throw you the seeds and then you build can you build the whole holiday for them?
Yeah, generally speaking, if somebody wants to go somewhere like that, they have a reason, and they will have done a certain amount of research as to why they want to go there and looked into things. But other than that, the logistics of it all, how feasible everything is, backtracking, all of that kind of thing, they mightn't know.
And again, if it's a client you've had for somebody like, say, Peter Barwell, you know exactly what he wants, so he can come into you and say, Bolivia, and then a week later you can give him...
Absolutely, but somebody like Peter Barwell will have done the research and know exactly where in Bolivia.
That was the first name I could think of.
But no, absolutely. But we have which is the beauty of our job as well, is that we have a whole array, and actually, yes, people could say, well, it's easy if somebody comes to you with what they want. Sometimes they think that's what they want, and sometimes when you do a little bit more research, it isn't feasible, or there is a better value way of doing it that they mightn't have thought of, and that's obviously where we come in. But also, it's great for us when somebody doesn't know, because it gives us the opportunity, and it may be somewhere that we're not as familiar with, so we get to learn as well, so that's great.
Is there anywhere that you would advise people not to go? I mean, there's obviously, I know the Home Office produces the Foreign Office.
Foreign Office advice, but other than that, no, because if it's somewhere that somebody wants to go to, or mentions, or or their criteria leads us to that particular place, we would always explain Foreign Office advice, because, well, we have to, and we have a duty of care to. But again, that would be down to them. So no, I mean, never against Foreign Office advice. You can't anyway, not that we would. But if there is, stay away from these areas. However, just be cautious, blah blah. Then that information would be passed on, and it would be a client's decision.
Now, bringing Sue in England, so what do you get? Do you get asked to plan English holidays? I mean, then
I do.
And what? What were you talking about? You're talking about.
Well, I mean, what I tend to do on the site, because based on the readership of the website, I tend to usually focus on either very traditional historical hotels or holiday cottages. And because it goes with, when we go on holiday, we pick specific cottages because of where they are or their historical significance and stuff. So, and I think cottage holidays in England work quite well. I mean, I don't know how you sort of feel about that.
Yeah, they do. And I think more so now, because, and this is something that I'm sure you come up against, dogs. So more and more people want to holiday with their dog. So cottages and even hotels that are dog friendly, restaurants that are local that are dog friendly are on a winner. Is key. And more, I went to the opening of a little cafe. It's not the official opening. It officially opens tomorrow, called the Mulberry Cafe in Copperdick.
Oh yes, I've seen it.
And again, that they only seat 14 downstairs. It's beautiful. It's lovely, and I so hope people get behind it, because it's great. But they again will have dogs. Now the difficulty there is it's relatively small, so you'll find if you've got a terrier, a Great Dane might be a little bit more difficult. But again, they have dog walking groups and cyclists that go past, things like that. So, it is a big market, and I think there are people that just wouldn't go to somewhere because they don't take dogs. It's a huge market. But that's again the things that we look into and research.
We have some sort of honeymooners that may be delaying their honeymoon for a few months to fit in with weather-wise, where they want to go long haul, and just want to go to a cottage with a hot tub or a lodge with a hot tub. Something a bit more special and different than the norm. So we've done quite a few of them, haven't we?
There's some fantastic cottages around. I mean, we stayed in Sussex in a converted Victorian showman's travelling carriage, and that was amazing. That was absolutely stunning. And I mean, literally, because you came out of your carriage and you had Bodiam Castle right in front of you. So I mean, it's sort of, you can find cottages. People are getting. It's not just, an old converted house and, I let this because Aunt or Granny has died and I'm just letting this out while we're sorting out who's going to sell it. I mean, a lot of cottage, they're making them quirky, they're making them very, very special to sort of, so you don't need to go to Japan necessarily to have an absolutely fantabulous holiday. You can do that here.
Yeah. Have you ever stayed in a lighthouse?
Not yet. That's on my to-do list.
It's funny, when I was at 15, 16 at school, and I was very shy, very sad, very lonely sort of person. I went to see the careers officer, and they asked you all these questions, and they said, well, there's only one job that suits you, and that's a lighthouse keeper.
I love that. I love that as a job. I'm sorry, you don't need people. You have hot and cold running internet. You've got the sea there. You can go for walks. That'd be my ideal job.
But they always have to have a minimum of 3. They have to have 3 people on a lighthouse in case one goes doolally and the other
One
moves.
needs the loo.
Yeah. So you haven't tied up with a surf school down in the southwest, have you? You've got one of your regular clients. Seems.
No, not yet. We should do though, really, wouldn't we? Would be beneficial.
Did you see that lovely
that.
photograph of his father-in-law on a surfboard?
Yes.
Is he 86 or 87?
Yeah, amazing.
But absolutely. I mean, he's my
They
role.
do-
He's my role model.
They do have a good time. They really do have a good time.
Brilliant. Right. Well, I can't believe it's nearly half an hour. As Dawn had picked up, I didn't realise until it's a year since you first came in, which I just think is
flown by, absolutely flown by. But you know, all good fun. So if we have another year like we've just had, we'll be very happy, won't we?
Well, best of luck. So, any awards in this conference? Is it just a conference?
No, it's not. It's not really awards. They do some recognition, but it's general. So they may pick up somebody that's really gone above and beyond, i.e. got in their car or flown over to somewhere to help somebody. It would be something like that.
They actually do.
Well, when needed, if needs really must, you do whatever you need to do. So, but things like that, and they just have, just not case studies. That's not the right expression, but they do have people that, you know, have gone through maybe some huge trauma within their personal lives, and it's really just inspirational stuff to show other travel counsellors what can be achieved or overcome in adversity and things like that, really. So it's just a great family orientated feel event.
On the awards things, I mean, there's awards within travel counsellors. Are there other industry awards that you can qualify and win? And
Yes, not necessarily individually, I guess, but on a travel counsellors level, there's TTG awards, Travel Weekly awards.
Home working company.
Yeah.
And then one last question, which is probably a little bit unfair, but there was a thing in one of the papers last week. High street travel agents. What's the future? From that look, not a great one.
The thing is, it saddens us to say it because that's
where you started,
and I've got nothing but good to say about high street travel agencies. One, in particular, where Lindsey and I both work, but it's very difficult to see how unless they really do change their business model, how they're going to survive, really, simply because the nature of people's booking patterns and the way that people like to book has changed so much. And although we do still have an awful lot of clients that want to meet up, which we like, at 11 o'clock at night you can't feasibly do that, but you can still help and support, and you're always available. It's very different to a high street agency.
Because we've got 2 left in Banbury, haven't we? On opposite each other in the high street.
Yeah, and again, lovely, great. The people that, certainly for Thomas Cook, we still know staff from when we were in the industry that work there, and they're fab. They really are fab. It's but it's a 9 to 5:30. It's quite Monday to Saturday, so we book loads on Sundays. And
one other thing I think that I probably mention each month is the continued expansion and growth in people, airlines coming in and out of Birmingham.
Yes.
Virtually every day I'm getting Jet 2 now. It's one of their major bases.
Absolutely. And with Monarch, that's going to.
I went up to Birmingham. It was rather sad for
it's really sad for the hangars and things.
Because the Monarch planes were parked there. But they were owned by, because Monarch leased all their airplanes. And they came from a company in Keflavik in Iceland.
Yes.
So they all flew them back. They got crews.
Well, when we were there, they were literally just boarding up the desk in departures in Birmingham. And I have to say, it was it was really, really sad.
But ironically, on the other side of the airfield, on the old Elmdon side, Monarch Engineering, which was a subsidiary, is incredibly successful. They serve and that's still.
It is just so. It is
great
so
company.
sad. It really is. But their business model just didn't work.
No. Well, I mean, we spoke last time. We look at the statistics. Monarch celebrated flying 5 million passengers in a year. Ryanair celebrated flying 15 million in a month. That's the difference. One of the exciting things at Birmingham, and I was in. people can't get away with things. I was in a pub in the middle of in Bletchington, the King's Head in Bletchington, and there were some blokes in suits there, and which is odd. And I was eavesdropping, and they were executives of a major national airline who decided to meet in a quiet little pub to discuss future plans.
Little did they know that Peter Jones.
And
was
they were sort of I was only half eavesdropping, but I went earlier in the year. British Airways have reintroduced services to Florence from Birmingham, and, weekends only. But these high-flying executives were talking about prices of property in and around Birmingham Airport. So I thought, wouldn't surprise me in the next.
Birmingham's map for us.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely brilliant.
Well, it's a great pity because if you remember, Eurohub Terminal 2 was all BA funded. So I reckon I wouldn't surprise me if we don't see them coming back.
Let's hope so.
Anyway, we'll play a bit of music and give say cheerio to Dawn and Lindsay. Million thanks for coming in. If December the 4th, if it's not too busy.
December the 4th is in the diary.
And then we're going to, and Sue very kindly is going to stay, and we're going to talk about essentially England and all things English. So let's find some music. Here we go.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going.
Well, that was a little bit of Beatles that whilst we said goodbye to Dawn and Lindsay, and we've swapped a few chairs and got closer to microphones. So got Sue with us again. Sue, I said welcome earlier on, but welcome back to Puritans Radio.
Thank you very much for having me here again.
Sue has I've got it in front of me, and it's well worth looking at. www.essentiallyengland.com for lovers of English history and traditional English food. And forgive me for saying this, you're not English, are you?
No.
So why?
Well, I think I always think that I was English in the previous life, and then I did something horrendous, and I got sent to Germany to grow up the next time around. But I've always had a thing for England since I realised that England was not where I was living. And it probably started with something silly like Richard the Lionheart or Robin Hood. But I've always wanted to come here, and growing up in East Germany, that never seemed at all feasible. And then the wall came down, and suddenly it was, and I came over here, and I absolutely adore the place, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And fortunately, sometimes when you have this dream and you go somewhere, it could turn out completely wrong because you've got expectations that are ridiculous or whatever. And I was very lucky that I came here, and it was everything I could have dreamt of, all in one gorgeous package. And
where did you come originally? Where did you first settle?
Well, I came to study in Kingston on Thames. I did my doctorate in geology.
Were you fluent in English before you came here?
Yeah, fairly enough, or fairly fluent. And then I met my husband, and we stayed, and we moved to Derbyshire for a little while. We lived in Sheffield, which is South Yorkshire really, but we were sort of on the border. And Sheffield was very, very different from London, and people up there absolutely fantastic. The walking's great, you know.
You don't find any English people in London anymore.
It's getting tricky. But and then we moved again with work. We moved down to Gloucestershire. We both ended up working in Swindon and living in Lechlade.
That's Wiltshire. That's Wiltshire. Lechlade.
Lechlade's Gloucestershire.
I thought it was Wiltshire.
No, we're just Gloucestershire.
Oh, the county boundaries, just the other side of the rivers. That's right. Because Fairford, I go to the Edis Fairford, which is in Gloucestershire.
Yes.
So I think the river's the boundary, isn't it?
The river is the boundary, and we lived there for 16 years, and then 6 years ago we moved up here, and again it was very, if you come, you turn left at Toaster, and you suddenly find all the little villages. It's sort of these little unexpected nuggets that you get. But the villages between Toaster and Banbury, it's just lovely there. So we've settled there, and we're very happy here. So.
Okay, now tell me what essentially England is just 10 years old.
It's 10 years old on December 14th.
Good, happy birthday.
That's when I put the homepage out. So it was a bit of a sort of a pipe dream of mine to sing.
And is that what you do full time?
No, that's part of my business. I use what I actually learn on the England side to help my clients.
What's your mainstream business? My
mainstream business is online marketing, so I help local businesses become more visible, get their websites working better, attract the right sort of traffic. And as I said, the way that started was with England, and England then started to do really well.
We shall have to talk. I have my own photographic website, and I keep fiddling around with it, and I have just not had the time. It's appalling. It's embarrassing. I'm actually tempted to take it down rather.
That's what a lot of businesses have, that problem, because they obviously focus on running their business day to day.
I use one of these one-on-one internet drop and box things.
No,
but
that's no problem with those, as long as you know how to address it to the right shape of audience. And I think a lot of businesses struggle with their websites because they see them as a bolt-on. And
so tell me, essentially England, how many people sort of, what do you call it, hits and visitors? And
I mean, we're getting about 1.5 million hits a year. So that sort of about 30,000 visitors a month. And
then that generates the advertisers, I guess.
That generates revenue. I mean, the revenue comes from obviously from advertising.
There's some quality advertisers on there as well.
The other one is then of course affiliate marketing. So if I, for example, with the gin craze at the moment, if you have a gin fan in your family, Fortnum's and Mason do a lovely set of gin bottles and socks. So if you want different kinds of gins and some fancy socks for somebody.
No, I don't know if you tried it. I was out and about food tasting last week, and as you say, gin is the big thing. I went and did a visit to a pub in Burford, the Maytime Inn, who prided themselves on the fact that they'd got 60 odd different gins, but the place that's in the lead at the moment with over 660 different is a hotel in Manchester, and the number one gin that most people seem to be drinking ironically is Bavarian 47, which is a German gin, yeah. But the gin that I drank on Tuesday, rhubarb gin.
Yeah, I was saying rhubarb gin.
Ah, it's fantastic.
The first time I had that was in Ludlow, actually, when we went for sort of a foodie break. But I wasn't very impressed with it. But then back in March, we went to Scotland for our wedding anniversary, and they had some lovely rhubarb gin in the hotel bar, and that was in a league of its own. So even the rhubarb gins are not all the same.
No.
I'm usually more a slow gin person, personally. It's that time of year.
Do you make your own slow gin? Yeah. Do you then make slow gin chocolate?
No, I haven't tried that.
When you've pulled, you've got the slows, and do you put almonds in yours as well?
I put almonds. I put cinnamon. I'm a big fan of cinnamon.
And brown sugar. So when you distill it all off, you're left with all this pulp. Go and buy 2 or 3 bars of Bourneville dark chocolate, melt it, pour all that residue in. It's a bit fiddly because you have to take the stones out of the sloes, and you've got the most fantastic liqueur chocolate. And most people throw what they...
do you mix it into the chocolate mass?
You melt the chocolate, and then pour in all those sloes, the almonds and the sugar residue, let it set, and you've got the most fabulous liqueur chocolate. But take the stones out, otherwise you end up with broken teeth.
Yeah, broken teeth, that's expensive.
So we've been talking earlier on about cottages, and we both want to go and stay. Well, I've stayed in a lighthouse, but you, yeah.
I haven't yet, no. That's we've walked past one on Devon, and I've actually there was incidentally just a Scottish island for sale not so long ago.
Oh, I'd love to buy an island.
I'd love to too, but I mean, we actually sat down and tried to work out the logistics of living on the island, and if you need a helicopter or a boat because it was literally just off Kirkcudbright, and you can only get into the harbour there 2 hours of either side of high tide. So if the high tide's in the middle of the night, you do need a helicopter to go in and do your shopping and stuff. So the logistics of living on an island is fantastic, and something that it sounds.
There's
really
also
nice.
the downside. I don't know if you watched Country File last night.
No,
but they were, I forgot which, it was an island off the coast of Wales. It begins with S, second letter's a K, Scoma or something like that. And where all the little baby seals are. And they were filming, and then they had to take a break because Hurricane Ophelia and Storm Brian hit it. And the pictures that they showed of the aftermath were horrendous if you were a seal lover. Yeah, but yeah, living, you only ever see, when you see the pictures of the islands for sale, they're always taken in the middle of the...
nice summer shot, blue sky and all that.
Have you been on Lundy then? Have you been across to Lundy Island?
No, we haven't. My husband has. I haven't, no. They used to be a big scout thing.
They used to.
Scout camps there.
In the 1950s, I'll give my age away now. In the 1950s, the Scout organisation did for the 1958 Jamboree, did a series of stamps, and Lundy Island featured on one.
Because I remember my husband telling me that they've been over.
But they were advertising for a resident, you wouldn't call it a caretaker on an island, a warden or something. I don't know if would I want to live on an island?
Well, as long as it's got hot and running hot and cold running internet, which is fine.
Yeah, hot and cold running internet. I like that. I've done a lot of sailing and have sort of moored up on several little and some uninhabited islands. It's a question for you. They will say, well, you know, essentially, how many named Scilly Isles are there?
No idea.
And to name them, they have to qualify to be named. They have to remain dry at high tide.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. There's only about 4 or 5 of them that are inhabited. There's 137 named Scilly Isles. Yeah.
I was studying with a girl who came from the Scillies, and I found it fascinating that she would go home by helicopter.
Yeah.
But so we haven't actually been. We've been to Cornwall, and we've seen them, but we haven't actually been.
There's a bit of a fuss at the moment because the helicopter service stopped some years ago, and you now go on the Selonian, the boat, and I think we're currently on the Mark V boat. But there's a planning application in to reintroduce the helicopter service. You can fly by fixed wing aeroplane from St Justin to forgotten the name of the airport now. And it's not important, but they want to reintroduce the. Yeah.
So I was saying the logistics of living there have to be difficult. I mean, if you need a doctor, whatever, how do you quickly get?
I sailed when I was sailing. I did a solo sail from Penzance to the Scilly Isles, and it's only about 25 miles, but you do lose sight of land. And I can remember as I came out of Newlyn, a Cornish fisherman asked me if I could speak French. I said, well, very well, because my mum's French. I'm quite. He said, oh, that'll be quite useful. I said, why? He said, because if when you get to land they're all talking French, you've missed the Scilly Isles and you're in Canada. Because the Scilly Isles, their highest point is only about 100 feet above sea level.
Oh, what? So you can.
So you do not
actually miss it.
You do not see them until you're about 2 or 3 miles away. Yeah. And the way I navigated, because the helicopters fly, I just followed the helicopters. Yeah. Yeah. So essentially England then. So tell me a little bit more about you've got recipes. English food. Now, are we talking about current English food or historical English food?
Actually, both. I like the traditional stuff. I like the sort of old recipes. I like to sort of troll second-hand bookshops for old cookery books, and it's sort of some of the stuff you look at and think, oh, never thought of putting those things together. And some things you think, oh yeah, we don't do it like this anymore. You know, it's. I'm thinking for next year, since it's our sort of celebration year, of putting some of the recipes into a booklet and making that available so people can download it and experiment with things.
Because we now have probably some of the finest restaurants, finest chefs, finest ingredients in the world.
It's very diverse. I mean, you can eat anything in Britain really these days, and you can wander around and you get very good quality food. You get sort of Italian, you get Japanese, you get Mexican, all in the same street if you're like.
Well, look at when you're Banbury, everything from sushi to Mexican.
But then I mean, you mentioned the wagon and horses earlier. Back the last with the previous owner, they did a fantastic they did sausages and mash with absolutely fantastic sausages. They did really nice pies. They did a steak pie that was to die for. So I'm hoping now that it's reopening, because I believe it closed because they had
for refurbishment. Yeah. But it's quite funny because Emma, and I've forgotten her husband's name now. She came in the other week, or I interviewed her. They went from running a town pub to a country pub. They're out at the George and Dragon at Chatham.
Oh, okay.
And very successful, and they've taken the menu with them if you're out that way. And the folks that have come into, is it Vicky? I can't think. The folks that have come into the Coach and Horses have the Red Lion at Ilmington, which is a terrific country pub, and they want to run a town pub. So.
Yeah, I mean that used to be. I used to love hanging out there, sort of at lunchtime if I had friends around, and just say, "Oh, let's come and just have lunch." But so I look forward to that.
There were two pubs, two pubs in this area. Well, to the west of this area, they used to use a lot in the 60s. The College Arms at Lower Quinton, which is a little village to the southwest of Stratford-on-Avon. It's the home of a really unsolved, a really funny unsolved murder which involved witchcraft and pitchforks and things. But the landlord of the College Arms was renowned for his something quite simple: gammon, egg and chips. And that's all he did. You had no choice: gammon, egg and chips, or that was it. And then there was a little village north of Stratford-on-Avon called at Aston Cantlow, and the King's Head pub there was world known for its duck suppers. Yeah, before duck, because duck is on every menu you go to now. But this wasn't. Yeah, you couldn't buy duck breasts in those days. You had the whole duck. But no. But again, when I first came to Banbury in 1971. You went to, it's now an Indian restaurant at Roxton. You went to the New Inn that did fantastic steaks. You went to the Red Lion in Cropredy that their menu was quite simple, smoked salmon starter, terrific steaks. You went to the Brasenose because Mr. North, the landlord there, did the most fantastic hazelnut meringues. But pubs now I won't say they all go to the same cash and carry.
No, but I mean this sort of reminds me very much of Japan, because in Japan the restaurants aren't. You tend not to go into a place and have everything on the menu. They tend to specialise. So you go for one restaurant will just do yakitori. They just do chicken skewers.
Yeah.
And one restaurant will only do sushi and sashimi, and the next place will only do eel. And they're very, very specific in the way they specialise in their food, and they would probably find it quite strange coming over here that you can go to a pub and you can get anything from fish to pudding all in one place. So.
Did you see that little article a couple of weeks ago about England's poshest pubs? England's poshest pubs, and they're all in this area over here in Chipping Norton. The King's Head at Bledington, the Swan at Swinfen, the Five Alls, and they're the ones which.
So what makes them posh?
The fact that David Cameron's had a pint in there, and the people like Gary Barlow and Kate Moss, sort of
so we don't talk about
and crazy prices. Well, one of the problems that they've got, and this was mirrored in the article. Oh, the other one, the Wild Rabbit at Kingham, and the Plough at Kingham. But one of the problems that they have got, and it's one of the problems that is in that in the food industry, is there aren't enough chefs to go around. They are all sort of, because chefs don't earn huge money. Well, they just don't, and there's just not enough of them to go around. So these pubs down and they're all sort of poaching off each other, and
that's a shame, really, because I mean chefs work very unsociable hours as well. So I mean, I think if there was good money in it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's and history on essentially England. Tell me a bit where the history side of it comes in.
That's a very much a work in progress, because I'm a bit of a history nerd, and I had this idea that I wanted to collect all the historical places together. Certainly the ones that we've visited. The problem with that is, of course, that it needs to do a lot of research, and then I'm getting really worried that I might get something wrong. So it doesn't get written nearly as fast as I would like it to. Eventually, I'd like to cover literally all of Britain's historical periods, but that's very much a job for the very long haul.
You've got to be so careful with history. I mean, one of the things when we have some of these television dramas, which there's one that finished last night set in Aden back in the, I think it was the 60s, and there are people who will watch these programmes looking for historic. Yeah.
I mean, I remember reading an article about an author who had researched writing a family drama set in Liverpool in 1936 or whenever it was, and they'd done their research very, very carefully to make sure they'd covered, they knew that the roads were correct and everything that happened in Liverpool at the time, and they got a reader comment saying, you have this character going by tram on this day, that doesn't work, there was a tram strike in Liverpool. So, and you can trip up over such tiny details, and I think that's one of the things why I haven't quite got as much history on there yet as I would like, because it's...
They're known, I think the expression, they're known as route master moments. There's a London double-decker bus, it was called a route master, but there were so many different, over the years, so many different models of it. And people watch these television programs, and they will literally write a letter to the BBC. No, your programme was set in 1956, but you had a 1958 route master, and that's where they're...
Yeah, and it's literally like this. And I mean, you can go two ways, and I'm probably getting to the point where I will write it up, and if somebody then contacts me and says, listen, you've got that detail wrong, then I'll go and fix it. I think you can sort of hang yourself up and things.
So recipes, English food. Have you eaten Stargazy pie?
No, I've not eaten it. We've been to Muzzle, and I've seen it on the menu, but unfortunately the pub was shut. So yeah, I've had a friend I worked with for a few
Cornish
years.
sardines. They used to call them pilchards, but they're now called Cornish sardines.
And yeah, it looks lovely. She used to make it for supper for New Year's Eve. Yeah, so that's still on my thing. I'm not sure I want to eat something that's looking at me. But
And overlapping with the history of the food, and we did touch slightly on drink, albeit gin, but pubs. Have you been in any? I mean, I don't know. There are about 3 or 4 pubs that claim to be the oldest in England. Have you been in any of the old historic pubs? I think
I probably have.
there's the one in Stow-on-the-Wold, which has been rebranded. I think it's called the Porch House now. I've forgotten what it was called before, but that's claimed to be one of the oldest.
Well,
And
there are several. I mean, there is
Hole in
one
the-
actually in along Holborn in London. It's called the City of York,
Yeah?
which is a hostelry that's been there since 1465 or 68 or something. So makes you wonder if Richard III's been in there.
Yeah.
Because obviously that was their part of town where the family sort of had...
Again, there's one in
their
Jerusalem. Not Jerusalem. I think it's called the Hole in the Wall or the Wall of Jerusalem in Nottingham.
Yeah.
And the one I went in the other week, which seems to have the best claim, the Royal Sovereign Standard of England in Beaconsfield.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, which
Okay,
is,
no, I haven't been to that one.
Yeah, I don't know which is Banbury's oldest pub.
No, I don't.
We'll I'm sure we'll find out. I know which is Banbury's newest pub. He's going to be on with us in a minute.
I can't answer either question. That's shocking.
So, going back to essentially England, then. I mean, that's an amazing number of hits, and that's just not. That's folks from all over the world, I guess.
Yes, it's worldwide.
And so, what's your? Tell me your. All right, where am I living? I'm Italian, and I want to come and have a typically English. Design for me the typical English. I want not a long weekend. I'll stay for a week. So what have I got to do? I'm not bothered about cities. I do like history. I do like my food. Being Italian, I like my women. So design for me the perfect.
One of the things you could do if you like Norman history. I mean, we've just been in Naples, and the Norman connection to that sort of fascinated me. So if say for example, if you're from Naples and you want to check out what the Normans did in England, I would make you a tour where you can literally follow the Norman invasion. So you start off in Sussex on the south coast, then wander up to Battle Abbey, have a wander around Senlac Hill. English Heritage does an absolutely fascinating audio tour of the battlefield, which is very, very eerie. And then from there you can wander around Hastings, go over to Dover, have some fantastic seafood along while you're driving, and then drive around the outside of Kent.
Next time you're down that way, if you are down that way, there's a restaurant in Walmer, just along from called Wits. WHITS, Wits of Walmer. He's ex-Savoy guy, opened his own, and he's getting really rave reviews. Yeah, I think is that in Kent? That'll be in Kent, won't it?
That'll be Kent. Walmer's nice. And then sort of if you go around the outside of the coast, you can go up to Whitstable. Try the oysters. We've been there since Roman times.
Yes, of course.
Before the Normans.
Food of the peasants.
And that's a fantastic little place. It's really quaint and a lot of good food. And then you can go around to Rochester and see one of the biggest Norman castles.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I can't believe we've had half an hour, so that's terrific. You'll come back and see us again?
I will.
Okay, well,
do that. Thank you.
we'll see you soon. Thanks for coming in.
Now, Peter Jones on Puritans Radio. Your station, your team, your community.
Yes, you're back with me, Peter Jones, coming to you live from the Banbury Plant High Community Stadium, the sunlit Banbury Plant High Community Stadium. And we also tell you now, this is the point of the show where we tell you what exciting is happening in Banbury. Right, we've done that, but there is one really exciting thing happening in Banbury. We've got a new pub, and if you've got a new pub, we've got a new landlord. And sat in front of me, we've got John Bellinger. John, welcome to Puritans Radio.
Hi.
But you're not new to the licensing game, are you? Far from it.
Not quite, no. First pub in 1981.
Yeah.
This is my 10th pub.
Yeah.
So I go back a long way.
Will this be your only pub, though?
Yeah, this is my only pub. I left the Pear Tree in Hook Norton just over a week ago to concentrate on preparing.
Was that your pub or was that a hooky pub?
It's a hooky pub. Brewery Tap. And I was a tenant there for almost 4 years.
Yeah, I won't mention any names, but there was a guy in the Banbury Guardian last week who has another Hook Norton pub. Is
Oh,
that?
just up the road.
Yeah.
The Sun is being taken over around about now
Gosh.
by Mark.
You've got
who's-
three pubs in Hook Norton.
3 pubs.
But
in
we're
Hook
not
Norton
talking
and the
about
club.
we're
Yes.
not talking about Hook Norton. Tell me, but you're not just opening any old pub. You're opening a micropub.
Yeah, micropub.
Because at the moment we're losing 15 pubs a week, aren't we?
Yeah.
So is it
and,
brave opening a
It's been like that for
Yeah.
quite a few years now. You're going to ask me if it was brave opening another pub, weren't you? Some say brave, some say stupid, but I think the whole micropub concept is completely different from your standard day-to-day pub. It's a small free house. It's low cost in terms of rent, in terms of rates, in terms of staffing. I'm free to buy from wherever I care to, so that means I can buy it cheaper because it's more competitive when you're not tied to a brewery. It's not quite as brave or stupid as it might first seem. There's no food offer, so I don't have to comply with so many rules and regulations as the other pubs, which, back in the 70s, they had to have a food offer if they wanted to survive, and since then more pubs have had to offer accommodation, and with accommodation there's lots of rules and regulations, especially fire regulations, and all these things come at a cost. So you take all those things away and you strip it down, and you've got the basis of a micropub. Micropub can't be too big, and in fact that was the problem I had when I was looking around for suitable premises, was to find one small enough at the right price. And I looked in several North Oxfordshire towns, and what I discovered was, because Banbury is slightly older than some of the other towns in North Oxfordshire, some of the properties tend to be a lot smaller as well. So there was more to choose from in Banbury than, say, Bicester. And I looked at the premises I now have. I looked at it several times, and I first of all didn't think it was suitable and carried on looking. But every time I walked past it, I had another look, and I formed a bit of a vision as to how it could look if it were to become a micropub, and suddenly it grew on me, and I put the offer in, which wasn't accepted straight away.
No. And are you bound by all the same licensing laws as?
Yep. Well, the landlord was a bit reluctant to let it to me straight away because he wanted to let his shop as soon as possible, and to apply for a premises licence takes a few months. To change of use takes a few months, and if he was waiting for me to get those permissions, he might quite easily have let it the following week, and whoever let it from him might have started trading the following week. So just to show that I was serious about my offer, I took a bit of a gamble. In fact, I'm not a gambling man, but it was the biggest gamble I've taken in my life. I invested a couple of £1,000 applying for those permissions
Before you'd signed the...
and I got the permissions, and I've got the lease on the premises.
Would your history of being in the licensed trade made it easier for you to get a permission than, say, myself or one of my colleagues over there?
I wouldn't necessarily say that.
No.
Yes, I do have a fairly good working knowledge of the licensing trade and licensing laws, but of course they changed not so many years ago, which made it easier to apply for a premises licence. I did take note out of other micropubs that have opened.
There's one more in Banbury, isn't there?
Yeah, the Bailiff's Tap, which is next to the Three Pigeons, and you can go online and have a look at applications, and you can see what the planning committees are looking for or not looking for. And so I was guided quite a bit by what I read about those. So when I put in my application for premises licence, I was quite strict with myself, knowing what they might knock me back on. And I'm very pleased to say it went straight through without them having to pull me up on anything, tell me to
and tell me, I should have started with this. Exactly what are we called and where are we? I haven't asked you yet.
But, the name of it is the Old Town Ale and Cider House. It's in 4A Church Lane.
That's the High Street end.
No, that's the Parson Street end.
Parsons.
It's Church Lane, for those that don't know, runs from Parson Street opposite the Reindeer through to the top of the pedestrianised part of the High Street.
What was there before then?
Previously, it was a health food shop, and
I
believe it may have been before that a newsagent.
Yeah, I
from
remember.
what people are telling me.
Good footfall.
Excellent football. In fact, I've been working on it seriously now for a couple of weeks. And the number of people walking past, and it's great because they're all showing an interest, they're all looking through the window, and some of them are knocking on the door and having a chat and asking what's going on. And
when are we scheduled to open?
16th of November, I've set myself a target just to so I don't sit back and relax,
Yeah.
so that I push myself. It looks pretty good now. I've got the furniture in, I've got the hops up. Put some
I saw that on you.
Yeah.
I see you've got a Facebook, but you haven't got a website yet. Have you got...
No, I'm not sure that I need a website.
No.
I did a social media course while I was at the pear tree. They said, well, you don't always need a website. Facebook page, if it's good enough, is as good as a website. And of course, you know, I'm looking at low overheads, and so the less I have to.
And the hours of opening?
Hours of opening. Well, hours of closing, first of all.
Right.
I close on Sunday night and all day Monday, because it's a one-man operation,
Yeah.
and even this one man has to have a bit of a break.
Yes, of course.
So 12 noon until 8 p.m. It finishes at 8 p.m. because it's residential.
Yeah.
Any new licence that's granted, they look at the impact and nuisance to the public. And I've seen from other applications that they're keen that micropubs close to where there is accommodation, they ask that they close earlier. And having a look at people drinking at that time of night in Banbury, there tends to be a bit of a lull between.
And then you get the sort
7
of,
and 10, and then
not being unkind, but you then start getting the sort of clientele that perhaps you don't want.
Well, yeah, that's one way of putting it. But yeah, it's a different clientele, and you know we're going to be selling cask ale, real cider, wine, soft drinks, interesting pub snacks, and we're not going to be selling lagers. We're not going to be selling alcopops, spirits. So it's only a certain type of people that will be interested.
Yeah,
in using the
when
pub.
we spoke on the phone the other day, I mentioned the old post office in Warwick, which is, forgive me for saying that, I think that's what a micropub should look like. But the guy's a bit of an eccentric there. He's got so much stuff. I mean, it's like a museum, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think he's got more second-hand or free stuff than I have. But then my vision is slightly different than his. But yeah, you're right. It's a very nice concept what he's got there. He does sell some lagers.
Yeah.
And
the only thing I don't like in there is they allow you to take your own food in, and he's right next door to the Warwick's best fish and chip shop. And I went in the other day, and just about everybody was eating fish and chips, and it smelled it for me.
Well,
yeah. But that was just me.
I'm going to provide plates, and I'm going to provide cutlery for people that want to.
I bring our own family.
Yeah, I think his is slightly more intimate because of the way it's laid out. But we'll have to see.
But what's quite interesting, you mentioned the residential side of things, because it doesn't. My mum lives just down the road in Warwick, so I pop in there occasionally. And his clientele are all the people that. And most of them are older than me. It's fantastic, and it's quite chat. I tell you what I'm going to do now, because I had no idea you were coming to town until Deborah, who sat behind us, tipped me off. Deborah's one of my co-presenters. Do you want to come and join us and ask a couple of intelligent questions that I have thought of?
A couple of intelligent questions.
This microphone's a bit dodgy today, Deborah. Stuart will be ringing up if we can't hear you.
I'll try to enunciate.
That's it. I can hear you.
Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me in the back?
Yeah.
Have
you met, by the way? Deborah
hello.
Deborah John.
Hi.
I thought she might have been one of the ones tapping on your door.
I do go past there a lot because it's right next to near El Safina and across from the gallery. So I tend to go in there a lot. And if I can bring food in, I'll be bringing something in from El Safina.
Bring something in from you as well.
They're really good. No, I saw the Facebook page because one of the town team told me about it and said that it was there, and I saw the pictures and I thought, well, they've done a really nice job because it was a white box. So I think it's terrific. But I love the idea of the micropubs. Those haven't been around that long though. It was a change of use regulation got loosened up or something to allow people to use them.
I think there are pubs that have been open for years, run by slightly eccentric people that could fall into the category of micropub. But the first micropub as a concept was, I think it was in 2005 in Kent, when the Medway towns were, the councils were looking at ways of rejuvenating their town centres.
Getting some of those spaces used again.
Yeah, and I think they were offering incentives to people. And a guy called Martin Hillier,
Right.
opened up a micropub. It wasn't called a micropub in those days, called the Butcher's Arms.
Yeah. It was just a
tiny,
very, very small pub.
Tiny little pub.
Right.
And suddenly they were popping up all over the place in that part of the country. And it took a few years before the idea spread.
But now there's a micropub association.
Micropub and
they have
microbrewery association.
Guidelines. Well, not. I mean, obviously you can run it the way you want, but the sort of idea is you don't have. There's no full kitchen. You maybe some crisps and snacky things.
I've actually got written down.
There you go.
Their definition. It says a micropub is a small free house which listens to its customers, mainly serves cask ales, promotes conversation, shuns all forms of electronic entertainment.
I'm down with that.
Dabbles in traditional pub snack.
Okay.
That's a broad outline, but every micropub I've been to is different in one way or another.
Yeah.
And I think that's the good thing, because everywhere is different. Everybody running pubs and micropubs are different. So it's good for them to have their own little character oozing.
I suppose it's
through the
because they are not too much oozing, I hope.
Brilliant. So I said to you, okay, for 15 minutes. We're into 20 now. So thanks for coming in, John.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
It's, I mean, from all of us here at Puritans Radio, you know our address when you have the opening.
We'll be there.
16th of November, make a note.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, because it's, I mean, one of the exciting parts about Banbury at the moment is Old Town.
Yeah.
And I reckon, okay, you've got the reindeer, which we spoke about earlier on off air, but you know, you're different.
Yeah.
And I think that's
the reindeer is actually my favourite pub of all times.
You
is it?
Yeah.
So I'm really pleased to be so close to it, and I don't see. I'm not going to be competing with the reindeer.
It's a different feel, a different thing.
Yeah, and it's a different offer in a way. I don't intend to be offering anything knowingly that people can get elsewhere in Banbury. I want to.
I bet you're having a bit of fun at the moment driving around various breweries, are you?
Well, no, I'm doing most of it online or by telephone.
Because I get you, with your experience, I guess you know most of them.
No, well, the last 10 years, my experience has been just Hook Norton. And although I've been running their cask ale training and appreciation course once a month, so I know a fair bit about Hook Norton, but I want to offer customers things that they can't get elsewhere in Banbury.
That's the joy of the independent.
Yeah, starting off with 4 different cask ales, maybe 5 or 6 real ciders, and then a wine offer, a soft drink offer.
Have a look, unless you already know it, have a look at Severn Cider, Svern, as in the River Severn. I was down there on Tuesday, and their cider is, you know, just am I allowed to say a couple of? No, I won't. A couple of eccentrics. I nearly used the wrong word.
Eccentric is good.
Yeah, making cider in the middle of the Forest of Dean, and people in the Forest of Dean aren't like the rest of us.
You're running into a lot of people in the forest.
I spent 2 days there. So, John, every success.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for coming in. Don't go just yet, because I'm out to sing. I've got to play a bit of music. Let's find a bit of music to go out to. A whiter shade of pale. There's a pale ale, isn't there? Right, if you heard anybody singing now, we've now been joined by Patrick Loomer. Patrick, welcome to Puritans Radio.
Thank you for having me back.
Patrick's becoming a regular feature now. Patrick is one of...
will travel.
He's one of Marks and Spencer's wine gurus, and he gave me a great tip last time about some offers at Marks and Spencer's were finishing, and I've spent far more money than I intended to. But,
Good. That's
Excellent.
Right, what I just want to talk to very briefly about, I've had a bit of a red letter week last week. I spent a lot of time down in Gloucestershire. Have either of you ever been to the Gloucester services on the M5?
I've not been, but I've read about it.
It's owned by the same family that own T-Bay services up on the M6 up in Cumbria.
Which I know nothing about.
It's the only family-owned and run services on the motorway network. All the others are welcome, road chef, people like that. And basically it's a farm shop. But it's not just any farm shop. It's a bit like a branch of Harvey Nichols or Dalesford, and all of the foods and stuff are sort of a bit like a farmer's market. You know, they can virtually see the producer from where they are.
Excellent.
So I went out to meet Jess and Jess's lady.
Isn't it also supposed to be sort of architecturally significant?
Architecturally, it's unbelievable because it's when they applied for planning permission, they were told yes, you can build it, but nobody can see it.
No one should be able to see it.
So it's a bit like a Teletubbies house.
Right.
It's covered in grass, and there are goats on top of it, beehives.
I want to go to the services with the goats on top.
It's about 45-minute drive, and
That's
you will love it.
Okay.
And it's quite easy to come back. Yeah. No, it is well worth the trip. And all of the food there, with the exception of the bread, which comes from a baker in Bath, they either cook on site and produce. Now, I went to meet Jess and Jess's ladies. Jess's ladies are a herd of milking cattle, the oldest of which is 21. I didn't realise that most milking cattle, when they get to 3 years old, and she knows them all.
I didn't know that either, but all right.
She knows them all by name, and it was
Sure.
quite obvious they have the same sort of affection for her, which was quite interesting. And the milk, this won't apply to you. Forgive me. Did you ever drink school milk? Are you old enough to have drunk school milk?
Not here in the UK.
Yeah.
No.
Is that different somehow? I don't.
School milk used to come in little 3-pint bottles,
Yeah.
and it was just pasteurised. It hadn't been the big word that begins with H that I can't pronounce.
Homogenised.
That's the word.
Homogenised.
And the thing with school milk, because it had to be provided cheaply, it was always probably about 2 days old.
Right.
Yeah.
And pasteurised milk will last for about 2.5 days. So it was
In
always
your childhood, it could have been anywhere.
Yeah.
Where did you have this milk?
No, I didn't. It was very much an English thing.
So it was always a
Thing,
big
yeah.
gamble if
Yeah.
you had
Until it was taken
but
away.
and it took you back to
Snatched away.
took you back to drinking school milk, which was
Oh,
fantastic.
all right.
And then we moved on to, I said earlier on, and I hope I wasn't being too unkind, that people in the Forest of Dean, they're not like the rest of us.
They live in a forest. Of course
yeah.
they're not.
No, they
Do they steal from the rich and give to the poor? Or?
no, that's a different forest, and that's
But equally not like the rest of us.
No, they are not. They are certainly not like the rest of us. But they're very nice people. And I went out to another farm run by a lady called Liz Godsell's cheese. And we've got some to taste later on this morning. Again, dairy farmers who diversified and started making cheese with great names. Their first cheese was called Three Virgins, and I thought, what a great name for a cheese. And when I asked the
What
obvious,
about the other 69?
and when I asked the obvious question, it was because the three ladies that were making the cheese had never made cheese before.
Oh right.
Oh, all right. Okay. Cheese virgins.
Yeah, and
Cheese virgins.
yeah, but and we have some Three Virgins over there on the
All
show.
right.
So, the only thing that worries me slightly is that all of these producers work with the farm, with the motorway services. They're building up and up. For example, 75% of the production goes to the. So they need to keep into them.
It's all in one basket, so to speak.
Otherwise.
Well, but I mean,
Otherwise, somebody will do a Marks and Spencers
possibly.
on them and screw them into the.
Possibly,
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
their goods available for, a services where a lot of people are
Yeah.
moving, through at any given time. It's exposure. I know there's been a lot of news coverage, media coverage of that services.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, there'll be.
No, and also just in defense of Marks and Spencers, because we're an own brand store, we would have a very different relationship with an artisanal cheese maker. Somebody like Sainsbury's, however, could rob them blind.
And then the day finished. Did the day finish?
Well, eventually the day finished.
Oh no! We then went on to Bowes Bakehouse in the most fantastic village that I've ever been in, Frampton-on-Severn. Sue Marchant, that was in earlier on, said it's her favourite. Yeah, it has England's longest village green, 22 acres. And it's between,
That's a heck of a green.
It's between the River Severn and the River Frome. It's so big. There are two pubs on the green.
On the green.
And one of them has got the cricket pitch in front of it. It is idyllic. And again, it's about an hour's drive from here.
Okay.
And tucked away there on a little industrial estate is Bowes Bakehouse, run by Jackie Coper Smith, who's a New Zealander, and Bow was her grandmother. So she's making.
These are Bow's recipes.
Yeah, she's making the cakes that her grandmother the recipe. And we have carrot cake
People
to
who
taste
can
later.
bake their
Is there
grandmother's.
beetroot in it?
Sorry?
Is there beetroot in it?
I don't know.
Yeah. You've developed a real
No, it's
anti-beetroot
well, no,
thing.
it's the
This has
the
come up for like the
Antipodeans
last
are somewhat
24
beetroot
hours.
obsessed, and they're putting up in all sorts of horrible things. We saw a thing on television last night where a man was putting beetroot into a muffaletta sandwich.
Thus rendering it non-muffaletta. Yeah. Yeah. No.
Horrendous thing to do.
Anyway, so we've got Bowes cake. I have spent 70 years searching for the perfect flapjack.
And did you find it?
Bowes Bakehouse's flapjacks. I've never tasted anything like it.
Wow.
Absolutely. And sadly, I ate them all. I ate them all.
Oh, so we'll
there's
just have to
But
imagine.
Yeah.
But we'll talk a little bit in a while about about the cake and about the things, and we'll give you some website addresses. So they do mail. They do mail order, but Now, talking of forests, the people in the Forest of Dean aren't like the rest of us. I haven't met enough people from the Savernake Forest yet to make an opinion on them, but two of the most interesting guys that I've met, Laurie Timpson and Philip Shaw from Savernake Knives. And I tell you what, I don't think you realise how hard it is for me to say Savernake Knives. I'm just going to keep saying it because I
say knives.
And we had a really, really fascinating chat with them about 4 or 5 months ago, and I thought I'd go down and catch up with them. So I went down into the Savernake Forest, and I think it was last week. So we're going to have a listen and see if we can get Laurie and Philip chatting away to us. Good. Well, I'm back down in the Savernake Forest with Laurie Timpson and Philip Shaw of the Savernake Knife Company, and I've been rehearsing that, so I got it right. So I'm feeling quite smug. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Thank you, Peter.
Well, actually, it's me that's welcome back. You.
Welcome back.
So what's happened since we were last down here? Which I think we looked, was it 3 or 4 months ago? You've been very busy at shows and stuff.
Well, shows, yes, certainly shows. The game fair, I think, and we went down to the River Cottage.
Oh yes, how did that go?
That was very interesting.
Yeah, it's up for sale, isn't it? It's up for sale.
Is it? I did not know that. Otherwise, I would have got my checkbook out. It's lovely. I managed to get down. It was a bank holiday weekend.
Yeah, it was the most glorious weekend.
Yeah, so that was very interesting. And then we had the Royal Berkshire show about a month ago now, which was fantastic. So we had this plan at the beginning of the year to do 5 or 6 shows and try and do as big a variety as much as you can as possible. And we thought that probably local big shows where people are going to spend would be the best. That was our theory, and 8 months later it turned out to be true, and the Royal Berkshire show was fantastic. So that was very good. Other than that, we've just been making headway into the professional chefs, which is a totally different thing. You have to have a different spiel for them.
So the shows, you go for the housewife or the serious amateur? Or?
Yes, we had a brand chap came and saw us and was trying to go through our customer list and come up with categories. And it really defies categorisation. We've got so many different people buying the knives for so many different reasons. And that's lovely. So everybody's a potential customer. And we are starting to figure out who is generally easier to sell to than others. But because people are buying presents, which is what a lot of our knives go as, that immediately doubles the different types of people you're selling to. So we're still very much figuring out who our real sort of problems are.
At a show, because you can't, because with the quality and the price of your knives, you can't give away free samples. So presumably give away a lot of cards. But how do you demonstrate? Are you stood there with tomatoes and carrots, chopping them up like you see at the Ideal Home show?
Yeah, we did actually buy quite a lot of leeks for one show, which was
we bought far too many.
Not very popular move because they weren't all chopped up. I think one of the most important things for us is for people being able to pick up the knife in their hand, and that, yes, actually, we go to the shows with sharp knives, but we getting that design, what they've seen, and then putting it in their hands, and it really straight away is a sort of tactile moment when they grasp the concept of what they're holding.
So it's the feel of the knife, because I noticed when I gave you my cheap mushroom knife that you practice with it on a piece of paper.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that a good test of how sharp a knife is?
Ish. I mean, it's quite an easy one to bluff.
Yeah.
I suppose it's like if you go along and buy a motorcycle helmet and you put it on, you say, "Wow, this visor is really clean and really, really nice." Well, it would be because it's in show condition. But a good motorcycle visor will still be looking like that in 6 months' time, whereas a cheap one will look scarred and you can't see through it. And so we sort of slightly shy away from too much of the whole edge demonstration thing, because it reminds us a bit too much of the late night shopping channel.
Yeah.
And you get other less good
you get everybody gather around
knife manufacturers and they're saying, look how sharp it is. And our point is, if you take a knife to a show, it's sharp. But the trick is in 3 months' time, how is the edge? And you can't really get that across in any practical terms at these shows. So, as Philip was saying, it's really about the feel of the handle, the weight, all these sort of things. And then they have to take our word for it that the steel we use is such high quality that it'll still be in good order in several months' time. And they can go away and do their research. But it's the feel of it, I think, is really...
Well, I hadn't fully appreciated, we were chatting earlier on, that, because we've all got different size hands.
Yeah.
And you were explaining to me the grips, what did you say the one chap had done? He
does a pinch grip.
Pinch grip. And
But Peter, if you look at that knife, and think how heavy it's going to be.
Yeah.
What was your first impression?
It's a lot lighter than I thought it would be. Yeah.
So, Laurie's better explain, but really, the whole, over the last few years that we've been looking at has been the geometry of how to make a knife. And you can buy a lot of very heavy knives out there. I think the weight tends to sort of, people get led by that thinking they're going to be good quality, but it's not necessarily. And so being able to make lightweight knives which are able to keep their edge is
especially if you're using
that's part of what we do.
Yeah, and if you're using it all day long, I don't.
Exactly. I mean, some people do prefer heavy knives, but they're in the minority, definitely. And I think that's probably one of the reasons Japanese knives are popular is because they are, comparatively speaking, very light. And as Philip said, it's a lot easier to make a heavy knife. You've just got much more leeway. You can be much more brutal with it. It's not going to warp. It's not going to bend. It's just easier to make. You've got greater tolerances.
Again, we were talking earlier on. I've been and spent a little bit of time at our local catering college, which has churned out some quite big names. And the head tutor there's advice as anybody leaves the college is go and buy yourself a roll of good knives. And Laurie didn't necessarily agree with that.
No, because actually every single, as we've been going along, we're talking to a lot of chefs, and yes, they sort of come out of catering college and they get given this, they get told to go and buy a roll of knives for every single job you could think of in the kitchen, and you eventually, as they go up through the ranks of working in kitchens, they realise that actually what you need in the kitchen is 1 or 2 good knives.
4, you said, didn't you? Yeah.
We think 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would say.
So, not wanting to. But so you end up having your knife for a character. You're not going to use it because actually, the other day you want one which is diverse enough to be able to do many jobs, and you don't have the time to be. Also, the time if you have a roll of knives, you've got to keep them all sharp. So. There's absolutely no point.
And of course, in the big kitchens where you've sort of got somebody doing the meat, somebody doing your leeks, if there's any, and they're all using different knives. They're not going to want the full set anyway, are they? Yeah. I mean, if you're chopping.
Good marketing wheeze, though.
Yeah.
It's good. I think. We find that. Yeah, it is a good marketing wheeze. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah. You go to these shows with the chefs, the celebrity chef, and he unrolls this thing like a canvas bag, like full of plumber's tools, with 20 different knives.
But it'll be a man from or woman, a person from the manufacturer of those knives on hand to give them to him before he goes on stage and remind him that he's contractually obliged to roll it out and talk about them for 30 seconds.
So the big name chefs aren't going to. They're not going to come and. They're not going to come and buy a knife then because they don't need to because they're not cooking anymore, are they?
I think if you're the really top end chefs, the really serious ones, then yes, you will be given for free really top end knives. But other than that, no. I mean, the deal is that you get paid money to say that these knives are good, but I very much doubt they actually use them themselves.
That's the same if you're a drummer in a rock band. If you're in a top rock band, don't buy your drums anymore, do you?
Yeah. No. But I mean, But again, I think it's more like a drummer on the old Top of the Pops when it wasn't live will be miming along, pretending to bash whoever pays him enough money to put their name on the bass drum. But when he's actually in the studio or touring himself, he wouldn't touch the particular manufacturer with a barge pole. So there's a lot of sponsored stuff going on.
Then next, what the future? World domination we were talking about last time, but we're still a couple of steps away from that, I guess.
Well, it's Christmas. We've got that one coming up now, looming, it's here. And really November is our sort of prime.
My wife would shoot me. Well, if I bought her a knife, she'd probably throw it at me if you make throwing knives.
We wouldn't advise that, Peter.
No.
We wouldn't, no.
And we would like you to come back again. So
yeah.
Let's
Well, yeah, so November, and because it takes a while to make the knife, and November is our absolute peak season. As soon as we start getting into the first week of December, it starts getting a bit close to our deadline. We do now have our gift invitations. I don't know if you were here when we were talking about them last time, but they're made by a very good wedding invitation company, and what that allows people to do is they choose the knife they want to buy as a present, and then the recipient gets this very nice invitation addressed to them, and then they can then ring us up or email us and then personalise that knife themselves. So that works well because someone can buy a knife and they don't have to worry about whether the end recipient will actually like how they've customised it, because that person customises themselves. And just on a sort of business logistics point of view, it means that in late December, when we're beyond our manufacturing deadline, we can sell the invitations to be given as Christmas presents, and then that will hopefully keep us in the...
So all your knives are made made to order. You don't keep a stock of knives. If somebody, you don't keep a stock. Presume you've got samples if anybody wants to come and look. But you don't keep a stock. Somebody couldn't just turn up and say, "I need a bread knife," and walk out with it.
No, we can, all the knives you see here at the moment are just ones which we have on our shelves. And yes, all are made. They are made to order. So every part of the knife can be customised. So we will try and keep some stock of the actual blades.
Yeah.
But in terms of actually putting the knives together and completing them, then we don't do it because people will be choosing different handle materials.
Sure.
It could be the finish on the actual blade itself, and then you've got the engraving.
So Mr. Smith wants to buy Mrs. Smith a knife for Christmas.
Yeah.
What's the running time from the time he rings up?
We say 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah. 3 weeks to order to finish.
So
for our customers then.
Yeah, no, I was going to say something ridiculous. What date's Christmas this year? But I know that. So yeah, as you say, beginning of December.
Beginning of December. But then this is where we really want to work on the gift invitations because although the great pressure of having to get your Christmas present in time for Christmas, at least you can actually say, look, here's a very beautiful card. It's an invitation for you to come up, to either come up and see us in the workshop or to call us up. And it's something
which is actually quite a nice present.
And actually, for that person's, it's even to customise those is a very personal thing. So although it's great to try and get it right first time around for someone as a gift, just having that time to come back in the new year is what we hope will also appeal to anyone who's either leaving it to the last minute or actually wants to give it as a present to customise themselves.
Yeah, that's quite a nice thing. Yeah. And the gift vouchers, is gift voucher the right word?
Invitation.
Yeah.
And they
invitation
are soon to be up on our website. But the best thing, like all these things, is just to give us a call, email us at the workshop.
And your knives started?
They start at £180 which is a small. We call it the Stout Yeoman, which is on the website, and that's a small utility knife, and they go up to £320 for what we also call the Brawny Chef, which is our sort of large chef knife.
Yes.
And then all the sort of knives in between are sort of around to £240, £260.
You used a great line the other week, a slightly risque line to sell a knife. I vaguely remember reading the word stiff in it or something. It was maybe
very useful little boner.
Yeah, that's it.
You have a useful little boner. It's very useful.
Yeah.
We have a nimble chopper. Yeah, no, that creates a bit of a reaction.
Well, it makes people smile. If it makes them buy, they'll look again. Then it'll make them buy a knife. Yeah.
Well, we hope so. But also, when you're staring at and trying to make a description for a knife, and you've got about 15 different knives to describe, you've got to add some sense of humour.
Yes, otherwise it goes stir crazy, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And are we? Can you see a situation where retail outlets, something like John Lewis, or then you've got to make hundreds of knives for them, I guess? We on your face. You don't want to.
There's a couple of people we're talking to who are not. They're substantial. They're not the size of John Lewis, but they have a part in their shop where you would go along and you say, right, I like that sofa, which you have in the display room, and then they get their fabric swatches out, and you do that, and you choose your cushions. So they have in their stores the facility to customise things. So talking to them, that would be much more are we. So we would have their 12 of our knives on display, for example, and we'd have to do a fair amount of manufacturing beforehand. We'd have to make all our different handle materials, all the different metal finishes. So they've got a sort of customisation box, and someone could then go up to this counter, which, talking to these retailers, is massively underemployed. And there's someone whose job is to be there to customise sofas, but they're not exactly customising sofas all days long. So to get them gainfully employed, taking orders for our knives and going through the customisation process has some appeal. But as regards making to stock and selling in bulk, no, I mean, the retailers seem to think that because they're used to working with manufacturers and suppliers who have generally a long sort of tail of other suppliers, so they say, look, we'll put in a bulk order for 10,000 units, and then what that supplier will do will squeeze everybody else down the line. But we don't have anyone else to squeeze apart from ourselves. So there's only certain discount we can give on a knife, and when we reach that level, we really can't realistically go below that because we're better off making a knife for someone else. So that sort of price level comes in for the retailers, and also just making to stock is, particularly in the winter, it's not easy work making a knife. It's slightly repetitive at times, but you have to concentrate, and most of all, you have to really care about it because it requires attention to detail. It requires the ability to have to say, right, actually that's not quite good enough, I'm going to have to go back 3 steps, effectively losing an hour of work, so I've got to get it right at that level before I can come back to where I am now. If you're making that for someone whose name you know, then that's a very easy thing to do, because you can picture it quite clearly in your head when they receive a package and they open up and there's a knife with our name on it. But when they open it, you want them to be really very pleasantly, not surprised, but I mean pleased by it and taken with it. And so you can see that, and you don't want to let them down, and you want to provide them with something better than they're expecting. So you will put the extra work in. If you're just making for a shelf in Bracknell, it's a sort of slightly different thing. And then people take them out and they sort of muck around with them, and they have, they use them as display models, and they get degraded, and then they want to send them back to us, and they're useless to us because unless someone orders that specific. So for all those reasons, no. And above and beyond all of that, our thing is customised knives, and at the moment they are.
And you want to maintain your position there as.
Well, we are expensive because there's only two of us in the way we make them. But I think.
I mean, you want 21st century craftsmen, aren't you? Really.
We are.
Yeah, and you presume you don't want to be at the size. I mean, you're happy making knives. You don't want to be a couple of administrators with 200 people in the unit down there.
Oh no, I'd like to do that.
Would you? Oh, right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
driving the corporate Jaguar. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love making knives, but I don't want to do it for the rest of my life.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So we want to build a business, and building a business that customises knives, and that can all be great.
Yeah.
This can all be great, but it's maintaining that element.
Yes.
And as you've always mentioned it before, but it's sort of making knives without compromise.
Yeah, and this is the principle of, I suppose, training in the army and other people I've worked with. You start at the bottom, so you learn all the jobs of everybody you're going to be in charge of. And we're at the stage now that, if in 5 years' time we had, say, 10 people working for us, there's very little wool they can pull over our eyes, because we've been in the trenches making knives ourselves and we know how it's done.
Yeah.
And I think that is vitally important, and that's why we start off like this, and you prove the concept and off you go. So we would like, in the future, to bring our prices down, to bring the ordering process and make it easier for people to do, but still retain exactly the same quality and have every knife made to order, so it's all personalised. And that's where we want to head, because no one else does that. And we are, at this stage, doing it at the level we're doing it, because there's only two of us, and we don't have millions of pounds in the bank account to invest in a factory.
And there's you haven't got any competitors at your level then, or?
There's no one, I'm going to say the UK, further than Europe, but there's no one doing this. And so, there's no competition in that way. We are amongst a band of many knife makers in the world. But, and it's, in some ways, one of our aims is to ensure that our product and how we make a knife becomes recognised. And that's a challenge for any manufacturing company starting from scratch.
And what would your personal choices be for the handle? Because you can get everything.
Material-wise?
Yeah, material-wise, yeah. Traditional bone, or?
I love Richlight. It's a material called Richlight, which we're using more and more of, and it's paper, resin paper, compressed paper in a resin, and you either get one solid colour.
I don't think it's a resin, is it?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
You either get one colour or you get layers of paper, so you get some other sort of. That knife there is Richlight.
So this is as you say, compressed paper, and then.
So especially from a professional chef's point of view, it's a great material to use in the kitchen because it's food hygiene proof, and it's robust, and it's just quite different.
And can be stuck in a washing machine?
None of our knives can be put into a washing machine.
None?
We just say do not put them in.
Yeah. For what reason? It blunts them or spoils them, or?
We've got hot water being jetted towards the metal is the worst thing you possibly do.
Yeah.
And from the handles as well.
The cutting edge. I mean, the cutting edge. If you look at it when it comes out, the blade will look fine because it's very good stainless steel. But your cutting edge, which is the microscopic thing, that's where the damage is taking place. If you get a bit of paper and you hold a lighter under the centre of the bits of paper, it just goes brown. So it's when you hold it on the edge it bursts into flames.
Yeah.
So the same thing here is why we don't, lots of reasons we don't use carbon non-stainless steel. But one of the main ones is that your cutting edge, which is very, very thin if it's been sharpened correctly, if you're using non-stainless steel, whenever that's cutting onions or it's cutting anything with salt in it, it's being attacked and destroyed. And people say you wipe it down. Yeah, you can, but your cutting edge is permanently being attacked and destroyed. Which, if you're using a knife in a non-salty, non-acidic environment, it's probably fine. But I think in the kitchen, no. So, at the very little tiny fissures and molecular cracks, you're pumping hot, salty water at the cutting edge in a dishwasher, so you'll knacker the edge. And then it also, just handles
would that apply to an ordinary domestic situation with, because I bung everything in the dishwasher, knives, the whole lot, so am I doing the wrong thing?
Yes.
Oh golly gosh.
I've
had a major, you're going to kick off a major domestic argument.
Your sharp kitchen knives will not be sharp for very long if you do that that way. They have, there's people called CATRA, the Cutlery and Allied Trades Association in Sheffield, and they have a test which they run, and it's all ISO certified, where they put a knife going through a dishwasher for 25 cycles and stuff like that. So a lot of knife manufacturers want to meet that test, and which is why you see them as sort of pretty unattractive handles, because it's difficult to make a nice handle that can take a dishwasher. So it's certainly possible that you're going to still. No one yet has created a steel that won't, that likes or is neutral about a dishwasher. The cutting edge will be degraded quite severely.
Golly gosh, that's something I've learned. I've just been proven wrong. I've had a domestic argument for 40 years when I put stuff in the dishwasher. Oh dear. Sharpening. You were saying earlier on how boring sharpening knives are, but the professional chef with one of your knives, for example, that one there, how often would he need to sharpen? Well, I suppose it depends how often he uses it, doesn't it? But
we find that if they hone correctly and frequently and regularly, then they're probably sharpening it every couple of weeks. 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah.
And that's a full. That's just a quick flash, or
I think it depends how. Well, I mean, that quick flash on the steel, that's honing. So not sharpening.
Yeah.
Which is different.
You've got there's something else you're going to have to explain.
Well, okay, so it's quite difficult to do on radio. Imagine, so you have to imagine now that you're looking at the very, very, very tip of the blade.
Yeah.
Which is coming to a very fine point. So like a pyramid, but narrower and taller. So we're just interested in that very, very fine tip. And as you're cutting with a blade, almost all of the time you're cutting down onto a chopping board. Yeah. So if you were to get a piece of A4 and turn it on its side and take it down towards the paper, it will roll one way or the other when you bring it down towards the table. Agreed? I mean, a piece of paper will roll or it'll crumple. So one of those two things happens to the very tip of the blade. Either it crumples slightly and so compresses, or it'll roll over very slightly. So that leads to lots of problems. You start cutting with a rounded shoulder, so it feels blunt. Also, it might roll one way, one bit of the blade, roll another bit of the blade, and where those two rolls meet, you start to get a rip, which will turn into a chip, into a tear. So for all these reasons, one should use a honing steel. And all that is a device, and it can be ceramic, and it can be made of steel, which is a harder material than the knife steel. And you gently run your knife down that every time you cook, and it just realigns or decompresses your cutting edge. So you're not actually removing any steel, and you're not making any sharper, but you're keeping it aligned.
Gotcha.
And that is akin to putting engine in your oil in your engine. And it does keep us awake at night slightly. A knife is only really enjoyable when it's sharp, and we make beautiful knives, we send them out and people love them for a week, and they don't know how to hone, and it doesn't matter how many times we tell them, and they will fall out of love with our knives because they don't hone them, and they think they're blunt. They're not, they just need a quick...
Yeah.
Anyway, so, if you hone it, then sharpening it is a totally different... That's when you actually need to remove steel.
Yeah.
So depending on how much damage you've done to your blade, how big your chips are, which shouldn't really be any, then yes, a very light sharpen, you just remove some metal, lots of different devices and ways of doing it. And maybe for a domestic user every month, every 2 months, a very light sharpen, and you're back in business.
Brilliant. And then we're almost out of time, but one last little story, if you can retell it. You're telling me outside the history of a knife starting, was it in the farming industry or something?
Oh yes, sorry, the chaps up in Sheffield, Smithsons. I never get their name right, they'll be very glad. Anyway, email me if you want to find out what their name are. And they make knives for the abattoir industry in the States, amongst other people. And they make nice knives, and they make knives specific to purpose. And this one is a cheap knife, and it's big, and it goes off 1,000 of them a month to the States, and they are used by the cow people, the beef slaughterers in the abattoir, and they're sharpened and used until they wear down, and then they go off to the pig guys and they do the same thing, and then it goes off to the people with the lambs, and in the end it's used by the people on the chickens, and then it's got about 1 inch of steel left and it's chopped, and that's what they do. I think that's a perfectly good way of making a knife.
I like that story. That's a nice way to end. Okay, well I guess we'll be back in 6 months' time, so we're getting on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to coming in. When you've got a big boardroom, that'll be quite good fun.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing you again, Peter.
Yeah, gentlemen, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, that was me down in the Savernake Forest with with Philip and Laurie at Savernake Knives. Now, have a look at their website, and I'm going to have to say this. It's spelt Savernake. If you put Savernake in and forget the E, you won't get them. www.savernakeknives.com, I think, or .co.uk, but whichever one you do, you'll get it. Terrific website, some fantastic photographs, some of the best photographs I've seen, which sadly I didn't take. One of the things, and also their Facebook page is well worth following. There's a little bit of humour, well, there's quite a bit of humour on their Facebook page when you read it. One of the things that they've introduced, well, they haven't introduced since I went, but which has cropped up on the Facebook pages, they've now produced several sets of knives. The Platoon, if anybody wants to buy me a Christmas present, I wouldn't say no to any of these. The Platoon, which comes in at £800, the Battalion at £1,200, or if I'm really special to you, the Regiment at £1,800.
How many knives do you get?
Well, loads of them. Have a look at the website.
Do the cooking for you?
But this is it. This is the cutting edge of knife technology. Funny enough, last night, I think on Countryfile or one of the programmes, there was a little snippet from the Ludlow Food Fair, which we'll talk about later on. But somebody was making a knife just using a lump of iron and a hammer and bashing away. These two guys call themselves 21st century artisans, and they use cutting edge technology, machinery that's manufactured by Haas, American company, who have their own Formula One team. Easy to get to, by the way. If anybody's down in the Savernake Forest, and you want to buy a couple of knives, then give them a buzz.
Now, Peter Jones on Puritans Radio. Your station, your team, your community.
Yes, you're back with me, Peter Jones, coming to you from still the sunlit Banbury Plant Hire Community Stadium, the home of Banbury United. And I'm joined now for the last hour of the show by Deborah Menikoff-Simmons and Patrick Loomer, who for the third month running has come all the way from London. So,
I have indeed.
Yeah. Do you have to take the day off?
Fortunately, not today.
Yeah. Working from home.
Yes.
What does a wine hero do if they're working from home?
Lots of research.
Now, we've been a little bit naughty because one of the things that we haven't shared with you is the food tasting. We were talking earlier on about my trip down to the Forest of Dean, where the people are different, and I bought back some souvenirs, some cheese from Liz Godsall's cheese farm, and some carrot cake from Bowes Bakery in Frampton-on-Severn. Now, if anybody wants to go and see a typical English village, and they do say English village, go to Frampton-on-Severn. It's got England's largest village green, 22 acres. Runs the whole length of the village. Now, I bought back some from Godsall's, and they've got good websites. I think it's is it a co.com or a .co? Godsall's cheese.
It's a
.com.
.com. GODSESS.com cheese, run by Liz Godsall and her husband and team. And I bought back a couple of bits of cheese, some Leonard Stanley, who sounds like he should be a singer in the fronting a band, but it's actually the name of the village where they are, and some double Gloucester, and we had a little bit of cheese.
Yeah, well, you put it down in front of us, and there was no way we were going to wait. So
yeah.
No, I think we did the Leonard Stanley first, which I think we thought was very, very good. You tasted more of a lemony.
Yeah, no, I thought it was lovely. Yeah. It was very fresh and
yeah, I thought it was very good.
Nice tang to it.
And then the traditional double Gloucester, which I double anything when it comes to cheese. Double Gouda, double Gloucester is fine with me. Was actually just
lovely and rich,
super rich, super lovely. And I could have easily eaten more of it, but then you put down the carrot cake. And we both have views on carrot cake.
We do. I mean, the first major plus point is
sorry, can you just check, just because there's some quite amusing cheeses on there.
Do you want the names?
Yeah.
Okay. So Godsall's, they're obviously humorous people.
She's got a great sense of humor.
The traditional double Gloucester is the most straightforward name on the list. Then there's the Hooded Monk, the double Gloucester cheese dipped in dark green wax, a more moist cheese than traditional. The single Gloucester, which presumably is straightforward, an earlier maturing cheese than its big brother, the double. Then the Leonard Stanley, traditional and waxed. Then there's the Three Virgins, which I think we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Virgins when it comes to cheese making. So it was named for the ladies who made it. The Holy Smoke.
Can I just say, when I asked the three ladies that were making the cheese, I looked at the name and I said,
well,
is this name? And they said, no, we were once, but we ain't no more.
Good for them. Good for, well, you know. Holy Smoked, a single Gloucester style.
They're right next door to the church. So,
smoked over oak chippings using traditional methods.
And it was actually smoked by accident originally. Something was on fire.
And then someone said, this works.
Yeah, something was on fire in the village and the only thing to survive was the cheese.
Some of the greatest things that ever came out of the kitchen were accidents. The Singing Granny, a mature single Gloucester with oodles of flavour, can be like Parmesan. Can it? I mean, really?
Well, I would imagine.
The Village Gossip, single Gloucester with chives, named after Stanley Spencer's village painting. And Cockadilly Chili, named after a small local hamlet. Our own cheese with select chilies giving hints of Mediterranean tomatoes.
Very hot.
Hot, exclamation point. All of these cheeses are suitable for vegetarians. Not vegans, vegetarians. Yes.
I think the two that we've tasted, they're vac packed and they've been in the sunshine. I don't think we tasted them they didn't taste as good as they did do when I tasted them down there. But I think that's
tasted good to me.
I thought they were perfect.
Okay,
I can only imagine that they tasted even
And then
better.
the carrot cake. The other place we visited was Beau's Bakehouse, and that's Beau BEAUS bakehouse.co.uk, run by Jackie Coper Smith. She's from New Zealand, as was her Granny Beau, and these are Granny Beau's recipes. So I said earlier on, and I do apologise to my guests, they make the most fantastic flapjacks.
Which we wouldn't know anything about, because you ate them all.
They were finished before I got home, but but I did save you some carrot cake.
You did, and well, I'll let Patrick explain our views on ingredients in carrot cake.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is that it's a raisin-free carrot cake.
Why people do that to carrot cake, I don't know.
Yeah. No, it was lovely. It was rich and moist. She had a good, fine grate on the carrot, so the carrot wasn't too...
The walnuts were chopped small, which is good.
And the addition of pineapple was lovely, lovely.
And thank you to Beau's Bakehouse for finally demonstrating that someone here can get cream cheese frosting right.
Good. All of these cheeses and the cakes and all the other stuff in the range you can buy at Gloucester Services. You want to go because it's right up your street. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Makes Dowsford look like a corner co-op. Right. Funny enough, the next day, having had a visit down to the Forest of Dean, for some reason I got invited back the very next day for something quite different. What do you know about eels?
They used to be very popular foods in their day.
Yeah.
Because it was cheap and available. So the London people were eating eels all the time.
Well, there are still various eel pie and mash shops in East London. There's one right by Hoxton, where I used to live.
That's it.
And that's lovely ambiance, but no, I'm not eating that.
Let me tell you about eels, because I was invited on Tuesday down to UK glass eels. Now,
glass eels?
Glass eels, and I'll explain why they're called glass eels. And this place was right alongside the A40 in the middle of Gloucester. And you've seen these prefabricated industrial units that look like they're made out of green fiberglass. There were 2 or 3 of those.
Right.
The first thing that you noticed was a bit different was all these airline cargo units. You know, the aluminum ones, and they've got UK glass eels on. So I thought, so they're obviously selling a lot. Eels live till they're about 15 or 20 years old.
Really?
Yeah. And they will live in, there will be an eel within half a mile of where we are. If there's a pond or a stream or something, there will be an eel in it.
Okay.
And when he gets between 15 and 20 years old, he gets a message. Time to go back down to the Sargasso Sea to end my life, but lay loads of eggs. Eels that have been caught, big eels, they're tagged. Some are tagged.
Right.
Nobody has ever, from whether it be from this country, from the Mediterranean, from France, nobody has ever caught an eel on its way back to the Sargasso Sea. They found the tags inside fish's stomachs when they've caught fish, but nobody's ever caught an eel, and they will go down to 1,000 or 2,000 feet on their way back to the Sargasso Sea.
If they've never caught them going back to the Sargasso Sea, how do they know that's where they're going?
Because that's where all the eels go.
How do they know?
Well, they've caught fish in the Sargasso Sea. Really.
Okay.
But anyway, don't ask questions. When the eel gets back to the Sargasso Sea, he or she will lay their eggs, and those eggs will float on the surface of the Atlantic for up to 2 years, and as eggs, and they will float until they reach the estuary of the River Severn, the Garonne, the entrance to the Mediterranean, and then they hatch out and they turn into glass eels, very little, thin, totally transparent, which are a great delicacy. They're caught in nets, or they used to be. It's now slightly banned.
I would imagine it would have a detrimental effect on the eel population.
But they're affected by the moon. Oh. So when it's a full moon, and we get these big spring tides,
werewolf eels.
The little elvers, little glass eels will swim into the estuary. When it starts getting light, they will cling to the banks in the little eddies, so the locals know where to fish. There are only 27 people licensed to fish for them, by the way, on the River Severn. And then they keep swimming. Next day, hide during the daylight until they can taste fresh water. Then they know they're home.
Oh.
Right. Let's just go back to the little glass eels.
Right.
They fetch thousands of pounds per kilos because they're a great delicacy.
So these people are producing the glass eels.
But they will catch.
People are not allowed to catch.
They will only take delivery of glass eels at night from men with buckets, right? And and they put these eels.
I saw a movie like this once.
they put these little glass eels in tanks, and they will then grow into elvers, which are the next stage, and slowly fatten up. But there are some rogues around.
Rogue eels or rogue eel catchers?
Rogue glass eel catchers.
Oh.
So whilst they're buying at the gate from recognised, licensed, there are the odd two people that turn up with buckets of glass elvers. And they want them all to be nice and wriggly.
Right.
There are two ways of making sure your eels are nice and wriggly. One is to pee in the bucket with the eels in, the little elvers in, and they will go all nice and wriggly. Or the other is to put a few spoonfuls of sugar in, and the eels will all go nice and wriggly, but then they will die. So the youngest person working in the factory, his job is to taste the water, so they know if. Anyway, the eels are fattened up. 75% of them are then flown off in these containers to China. China takes 75% of all of these elvers.
Where is such a delicacy?
And then the other thing that they're really, really big into is regeneration. So they've got all the local schools involved who have tanks of eels and take part, and they've stocking lakes in Wales.
So it's like a catcher. It's like a release program, like breed and release.
It's absolutely spot on. So it's a really big it's a big thing, and the eel population is increasing. But when it gets interesting, because the eel is.
I had no idea there were so many things going on with eels.
Oh, I guess even better. The eel has swum up, and there'll be, I don't know, there's probably a pond over here somewhere. It could even be
a canal right there.
Yeah, and there'll be eels in it. And when they get the message, it's time to go back, they'll come out in their little groups.
Yeah.
One eel in a little group will climb a tree, and he will listen for the sound of running water.
But they're in the water.
But they're in ponds. Or they're in canals that aren't going anywhere. They will listen for the sound of running water because they know that if they get into running water, eventually it will lead them into the sea and they can swim back to the Sargasso.
So there's an alpha eel who can climb a tree.
Yeah.
And has super hearing.
Yes.
All right.
So when you're walking around...
Maybe just squishy, sticky.
So when you're walking around at night and you hear a rustling in the trees, it's not necessarily an owl.
It might be an eel.
But this process takes place...
This must take a long time.
For about 3 months of the year.
Okay.
So what do you do by the side of the A40 with all these big tanks for 9 months of the year?
Well, but if they're breeding eels.
Well, no, once they get to
okay. I don't know.
So you make salt water, and you get crabs. You take delivery of crabs.
Something, that's true.
They get crabs from all over the country.
Yeah.
I've never seen so many crabs in one place.
Okay.
And they are there for as short a term as possible. They get these crabs in. Once they've got enough, stick them on an aeroplane live, and guess where they go to?
China.
Spot on. So 100% of and it was just absolutely fascinating. Wow. So that was that. Then we then moved on to the other side of the river down to, and it's a place again you've got to go and visit. The Wye and Severn Valley Smokery.
What are they smoking?
Yeah, smoked salmon.
Now, see, that I can get behind.
How many salmon have been caught on the River Severn this year?
Not the first clue.
Zero.
None.
Zero.
None.
Yeah. This guy.
There's no other point in asking the question.
This guy got into smoking salmon because that's what his mum and did at the little hut at the bottom of their garden. 30, 40 years later, he's the biggest producer of smoked salmon in this country. They don't retail it. It goes to people like Gate Gourmet and stuff like that.
Right.
I've never seen anything like it. The 150 women, can you imagine stood by a conveyor belt all day long with a pair of tweezers pin-boning sides of salmon?
No. No, I can't.
I'm sure Richard looks after them very well, and they do get a 2-hour break, but they do these 10-hour shifts.
All right, well...
and then there's sliced,
and yet that's the only way to get rid of those
packed,
pin bones, really.
He gets his salmon from the Faroes. The best producers of farmed salmon are Norwegians.
Well, that I knew.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, no salmon in the river. He's got a bit of a problem because apparently there are some good salmon on the River Usk. But he says every time he reaches the Welsh border, he freezes. He just can't put his foot into Wales. Don't know why. There's nothing wrong with us. And that was a real eye opener. A real eye opener. And then.
Did you get to try some of the salmon?
We were entertained to lunch.
Oh, okay.
We had a 21-course lunch.
Were they all salmon?
No, only the first 8 courses.
I mean, there's enough salmon for me for a week.
Yeah, 8, and it was some of the best smoked salmon I've ever eaten. And smoked eel. Presumably one that, I don't know if it was a tree eel or landed, which was, believe it or not, guess what? Tasted like chicken. And that was rather nice. And then oyster, it was really nice.
If you say so.
Yeah, and then we had some Gloucestershire crab, we had oysters, we had turbot,
so
traditional fish and chips. It just went on, and beautiful squid with, and that was good. And then I thought, well, that's the end of the day, but no, we were then taken to. It was dark by the time we got there, and this was deep into the forest,
where the people really aren't like you.
Where they make their own cider. And
all right. Did you have some of that?
Yeah,
too?
but I had to have the mulled cider. I couldn't drink cold cider, and and to show willing, I bought a bottle of cider, which in the dark, which I thought was quite decent thing to do. Showed willing. Had a swig out of it the next morning and discovered.
No.
I decided definite no because I discovered I'd bought cider vinegar, not cider.
Yeah.
Well, no. You should be keeping that.
Yeah.
Achingly hip is cider vinegar, particularly if it's raw and unfiltered.
Yes.
Very
it's still got. It tells you to pour it through a tea strainer because it's still got
no. Keep
the cider mother in there.
It's excellent for use.
Excellent.
Very good for you.
Yeah. So that was my trip down into Gloucestershire, and then the next day, as we heard, I was down in the Savernake Forest.
Yeah.
So, but joking aside, go and have a look at Gloucester services.
I'm going to.
Go and all these folks, they welcome visitors.
That's
good. The various producers. It'll take your breath away. And if you're down that way, the Wye Valley Smokery and Lydney Docks. I'm not going to say any more about Lydney Docks. It is one of the most spectacular places I've been to. Right, I'm going to have a bit of a break now. So
you're exhausted from relating all that food that you ate.
Yeah.
I was
trying to remember what I'd eaten. I just want to show you. Well, I won't show you because you've already seen it.
We're on the radio.
Nobody
can see anything.
Deddington Food Farmers Market last week, which just gets better and better and better. I bought some apples, and I sent a picture of the apple that I bought at Deddington
It was a heck of an apple.
See that football behind you on the?
Yeah.
It's about that size.
Yeah, it was.
Oh my!
It was a. Clean forgot to ask the guy the variety. It was an Old English cross between a cooking and an eating apple.
Oh my lord!
I know. Look at the size of it. Nobody on the radio can see, but Peter put a picture up. He sent me the picture of this apple he bought next to a regular sort of granny apple.
Gloucestershire crabs.
And it's like 3 times the size of a regular apple.
Anyway, we're gonna listen to. Sorry, I've whittled on a little bit longer than I intended to there. So if you can chat away for about 10 minutes or so, and then
I think we can manage that.
We'll have a listen to Rosemary again.
All right. Okay.
All yours.
Oh, good. Because I've been thinking about this. If the holiday season is upon us, I don't start thinking about the holiday season before Halloween, unlike many of the department stores. Which you've probably been subjected to Christmas music for months.
Not yet,
already.
no. Fortunately, the Christmas music onslaught is yet to begin.
But it's coming.
It's coming.
No, but when I do think about the holiday season, obviously it's big holiday meals. Now, I have sort of holiday meals from left field. I never did the big Thanksgiving at home because I was at home at my parents'. My
Right.
mother handled Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
They don't do Thanksgiving here, really. Although Neil did do it one year, which was nice
Right.
of him.
I'll be cooking it.
And you're going to be doing
Yep.
Thanksgiving. But everyone here has the, Christmas dinner, whatever.
Mm-hmm. And they're very similar. And they're very similar.
Yeah,
meals.
there's many dishes, many types of dishes,
Yeah.
and of course, then what are you going to drink? If you're going to do Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, how do you
Yeah.
approach what wine to
Right,
drink?
well-
You can't just have one.
No, I mean
Well,
you
you
can.
could,
Well,
but-
bounty is the word of the day for any feast. If you're having a first course, which is much more likely to happen with a Christmas meal than with a Thanksgiving meal.
Yeah.
And quite often with a Christmas meal, it's smoked salmon. Here, people will start off with a smoked salmon. Champagne, of course, is
Something
lovely.
light.
White wine is great particularly good for smoked salmon because
Well,
the
you don't want
acidity
something to fight the salmon. You don't want anything to overwhelm the smoked salmon.
what you want is the acidity of the white wine, which balances the richness of the smoked salmon, because smoked salmon is quite fatty and rich, and also that smooth, slippery texture of smoked salmon works really well against something very crisp and fresh. Then when you're going into your main course, into your roast turkey or your roast bird, and it depends which bird you roast. If it is a turkey, it's going to depend on if you're using wine in your gravy, what color wine are you using? You can go either way. You can really go white or you can go red. If you're going to go red wine gravy, then you would probably go with a red wine.
Sure.
And if you're going to go with a white wine gravy, you can stay with a white wine. Again, white wine can be good in that acidity can help balance against a really big, fulsome meal.
Yeah.
Whereas...
Which is that kind of meal.
Yeah, but there tends to be a lot of spicing and stuff going on in stuffings and stuff like that.
That's true.
Where red wine balances that really well. The thing is, different people like different things. One of your guests will want to start with white wine and stay with white wine. One of your guests will want to start with red wine and stay with red wine. Give people the option, and my rule is let people drink what they like. Try to have enough around so that you don't feel under-catered.
Which is like everybody's nightmare. Well, not everybody's nightmare, but I was raised to believe that under-catering is like the worst thing you can do.
Yeah. Never assume that people will bring enough wine to make it all okay. No, make sure that you've got figure on a half a bottle of wine per person.
Right.
At a minimum.
Separate wine for dessert?
Now, this is where you'd absolutely do completely separate, and this is where I'd suggest spending your money. You can buy some perfectly lovely white wines and reds in the 8 to 10 pound range. Lots of stores will be doing bulk discounts.
Plenty of choices.
Yeah, there's lots of choices. M&S is doing a great mixed case offer at the moment, available in stores.
There you go. Make a note of that, Peter.
Yep. And again, we have our bulk discounts going on. They'll be going on through Christmas. Where you want to spend your money, if you're going to spend your money on a bottle of wine, is on your dessert wine.
Right.
Now, dessert wines are a very different thing. They're very sweet, slightly thicker, slightly syrupy. Don't let that put you off, because their purpose is to partner something very sweet or a very strong cheese. So,
which is why they're made that way.
Which is why they are. So this is where I would suggest really knocking the boat out and going for something like a Tokaj, which is a brilliant Hungarian wine.
Is it also the case that because it is the dessert course and the dessert wine, people are probably not drinking as much of it?
You wouldn't drink as much, no.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever drunk Chateau Yquem?
I haven't tried a Chateau Yquem, no.
Is that a dessert wine, or is it?
That is the dessert wine.
The Tokaj lovers among us might disagree. No, the Tokaj is the wine of legends. It's the wine of kings and emperors and princes. Yes, this is the great stuff. But yes, no, if you look at wine glasses, if you go into a homeware store or whatever, homeware department, and you look at the size of wine glasses, you have sort of a medium size for your white wine and then a much larger size for your red. For your dessert wine, you get something quite small.
Right.
So you're drinking a much smaller amount. They also tend to be slightly higher in alcohol, which is the other reason why.
Okay.
And then, of course, you go into your port.
Which is again, after everything.
Which is absolutely after everything.
Right, okay, and those glasses are bigger because they want more air, yes?
No, that's brandy.
Oh, that's brandy.
Brandy comes in the huge.
I don't know these
Port,
things.
again, is in the very small glass.
People just put glasses of things in front of me and I drink them.
Port it's a fortified wine, so again,
Right.
that's significantly higher in alcohol level.
Okay.
If you think of port and sherry are sort of halfway between a wine and a brandy. Brandy is a spirit, but it's a spirit made from wine.
So now I know where to splash the money out.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were going to do...
Go for the bulk discounts on your reds and your whites for the meal. Spend the money on your dessert wine. And don't say you don't think you have to go for champagne for your sparkling wine. There's some lovely Prosecco's.
We had that whole Prosecco Cava conversation.
Absolutely.
And you told me there were red sparklings, which I had no idea.
Yep, you can do for those too.
No idea. So are you doing Thanksgiving this year?
I am doing Thanksgiving this year. And as a
fresh turkey.
Fresh turkey, I'm finding myself a butcher who can... Finding its fresh turkey before the end of November, it's very difficult in this country. And I just wanted to do a quick shout out to my fellow Americans living in Banbury who may be panicking around about this time of year about certain American ingredients that for American pies, like pecan pies and stuff like that. You may be thinking, I can't find blackstrap molasses. I can't get it. I'll have to get it online. Yeah.
Here.
It is here. It's just that here we call it treacle.
It's literally the same thing.
Yes. Golden syrup is molasses. Treacle is blackstrap molasses. It is literally the same thing.
Oh, okay, because I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because you do need the blackstrap molasses for those pies.
Exactly. Yeah. So fear not. You'll be safe with treacle. If you're looking for cornmeal, look for polenta.
Polenta.
That is cornmeal.
The time Neil did the Thanksgiving, he was like, oh, I want to do the cornbread. We searched everywhere. And just in that moment, at that moment, we couldn't find it anywhere. But now I know that they do have it, in the shops in the form that we
exactly.
needed.
Just something called a little different. What you will have to resort to going online for is corn syrup, which just doesn't exist here in the UK at all. You'd have to go to someplace that specializes in American stuff, or find it online.
Yeah. Excellent.
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Right, if I can... just one thing, we're going to listen to Rosemary Schrager now, but going back to your dessert wines, what I don't anymore, but I always used to have in the door of the fridge a bottle of Montbazillac. What was the other, or a Muscatel, but used to drink it as an aperitif. Right, just
some
ice
people do as well.
Yeah. The worst thing I've put in my mouth recently, apart from Gloucestershire crabs, somebody bought me back from Portugal the other week a bottle of white port, and I made the mistake of for various reasons which I won't go into. I have to hide bottles in my house, and I'd hidden this bottle between a settee and a radiator, and white port served at about 70 degrees is not a very nice drink.
No, but here's what it's not lost. If you haven't actually brought it to the boil, it should be okay. Let it cool down again. What you want to do is, because white port actually is a lovely, lovely thing.
Yeah.
You want to serve yourself that white port with tonic water and a twist of orange, like a slice of orange. It's heaven, absolute heaven. Really, really delicious. And white port is quite the chic thing at the moment.
I didn't even know such a thing existed.
Oh yes, my drink of choice at the moment is vodka tonic with a slice of lime.
Very classic.
Yeah. Sorry?
Yep.
Very classic.
Well, they drink it on Made in Chelsea, you see.
Yes, I'm a vodka tonic fan myself. Just make sure you have a good tonic, something like Fever Tree.
Yeah.
Don't buy, tonic water is something where it's really worth spending the money. And you can also test if you happen to have a black light in about your
As you
type
do.
person. Go down to your nearest disco and you can test there. You can test if it is true tonic water by exposing it to black light, because it will be fluorescent. Quinine, which is the active ingredient in tonic water, is fluorescent.
Right. Do people try to pass stuff off?
Yes, they do flavorings instead of quinine.
Another drink I've tried recently, and I can't think where, because we've still got this big growth in gins. Yeah, the number 4.
Number 4 is just open.
I think they're going to be having them in on December. Yeah. They've got 40 different gins. They keep using the number 4.
Probably 39.
I tell you where they're going wrong. Is not opening. They're not going to open till 4 every day, which is a mistake. They're going to miss all the lunch.
How much earlier do you want your gin?
No, you want the lunch.
I want my lunch. Yeah.
I guess that's true.
No, to go back to gins, I had rhubarb gin. Have you tried rhubarb gin?
No.
Fantastic.
Warner Edwards? Was it Warner Edwards? Rhubarb gin?
I didn't. It wasn't in the glass long enough to read the label.
Yeah. No, I have had a taste of that. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing about
You
gin
can
is...
infuse them with anything.
Well, that's the whole point of gin. Gin, I
Yeah.
mean, gin is in its purest form no different than vodka, really.
Yeah, there's no actual...
It's the ethanol. But gin is all about the botanicals.
Yeah.
So, yeah, something like an infused gin would be...
I infused
with
my
rum
vodka
is
so
lovely.
completely with lemon
Were
that
you-
it became limoncello.
Yeah. Were you here when we drank the Cornish pastis?
No, unfortunately,
No.
I missed that.
I'll bring you some next
Oh,
time.
that would be lovely.
Right, we're going to listen now to an interview that we did last August with Rosemary Schrager.
She made me laugh last week because she was the judge on the Cooking Showdown, and there was this whole thing the week before where she says she wasn't flirting with the Pigott brothers, who are sort of local to Banbury, and had gotten to the final. And I don't think she meant to go over and flirt with the Pigott brothers, but she was flirting with the Pigott brothers. And, it was very, very funny because they called her on it. We all saw it.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to brag, but she flirted with me as well when we did this interview. Let's
Well,
listen.
she's a very flirty woman.
Right, this morning I'm finding myself in Banbury Town Hall, and I'm slightly embarrassed because this is the first, I've lived in Banbury for 40 years, this is the first time I've been in the Town Hall. But sat opposite me, I'm delighted to say, is Chef Rosemary Schrager. Welcome to Banbury. I gather it's your first time here.
It certainly is.
We've given you a little souvenir to take back.
I know how exciting it is. Beautiful.
Excellent.
Lovely. Banbury original
Banbury cakes.
Never had them. Looking forward to that.
Good, excellent. What I really want to ask you, because you're known as a great teacher, is teacher the right word?
Well, yes, I do teach, and this is my teaching is actually what I probably love most of all, is because I love showing people how to do things, because there is a massive generation of people not knowing how to cook. Now, the fascination that people have with watching shows, reading magazines and wanting to know more, it's almost like a sort of glossary in the fact that they like to look at the pictures, aspirational, but actually coming to do it is quite difficult, because when we brought up, our mothers or grandparents used to show us how to cook and things like this, but there has been this lost generation that I'm all part of as well, where you actually didn't have time to show the children. I mean, because I was in the industry, I actually did, and I was lucky, but I probably wouldn't have had if I hadn't actually if I'd done something else. So I do feel that people are fascinated with how people do it, but some people will start doing knife work. Some people will start to actually learn how to cook from watching TV programs. But what I do feel is there is a huge generation who just can't do it.
Where do we go wrong? Because do they still do domestic? We used to call it domestic science in the old days. Do they still? Is domestic science still on the curriculum at schools? Do they still?
Definitely, yes, they do. There's a lot of theory going on, which I think is also important. But I think practical cooking is really what it's all about, because you learn as you go along. You learn how to work things as you do it, and the technical side also somehow works automatically. There's health and hygiene, obviously, which is very important. That's all part of the whole thing, curriculum. But in terms of cooking, I don't think it's still done enough. I really don't. But it is still there.
Why exactly? Why don't we? I mean, we've got shelves full of books. I've got several of yours.
Yeah, have you? I just don't know. I mean, the answer is, I think probably they thought there were more important things to do. But actually, I think learning to cook is incredibly important. But as I said, they do teach children how to cook. They do. They've got the simple things, how to do pizzas, lasagnas, and which is good. But it's whether it's actually encouraging them to keep going on. And sometimes, I know this sounds a bit crazy, but sometimes too much theory can put them off and actually put them down another avenue, saying, I can't be bothered with this, which is such a shame. I think there's a place for practical cooking, just practical cooking in learn, because it's all about life, it's about the future. And also it's about learning about seasonality, it's learning about how to prepare a vegetable, how to prepare whatever it is, just in preparation. And you somehow never forget that as a child. When you're taught, your teacher taught you how to do that, and you don't do it. And although I'm saying they do it, but but they don't do it enough, in my book.
Because some of the cookery programmes now have taken it to the level that we will never do domestically. You know, you look at Master Chef and and stuff like that. In your new programme, you've brought it sort of not back down to grassroots.
Yes. But what I'm hoping, one of the things in the new programme, because I think cooking as a family is incredibly important.
Eating as a family,
cooking and then eating, sharing. I think it's all about sharing. And I think that's when conversations happen as well. And also that's when people eat the food as well, because they know how it's progressed and how it's happened, the process of everything. And I think on every level it is important. And I think this new show, and this is not about advertising the show, but what I'm hoping is that people will see actually people cooking with a family. It's joyous, it's fun, it's funny. It's actually fascinating. I mean, the diversity, and also what I love about this program is the diversity of the food. The whole I'm learning something. These are British people. They come from all over the world, but they're British. It's part of our British culture, and we need to learn more about this. And I am a culprit to not, because I've been brought up quintessentially British in inverted commas. Which is wrong, because we're not that. We're cosmopolitan now. It's about diversity, differences in life. But we're all British together, so we should learn. And I love that side of it. I love the side.
You're quite passionate about it.
I actually am very passionate about it, because, like it or not, we're here. We are a diverse society, and we need to stick with this diverse society and embrace it on every single level.
No, you look at the ingredients, not the ingredients that we can just buy now, but we're growing stuff that we would never have grown.
Well, we have these wonderful, availability from all over the world of growing all these different, as I say, vegetables and things. And in fact, the world is so small now, it's all about weather, to be honest with you. Whether you have a little micro garden, which is, you can do a little sort of subtropical planting going on, or whether you're in an orchard in Kent, or wherever you are, you can find something diverse that you can do within that garden. And I just feel that we should be embracing it. So actually working with all these lovely people, and they are really wonderful contestants, I have learned so much.
You're still learning. You're not just teaching. You never do stop learning.
You never stop learning. The moment you start learning, you might as well give up. You don't know it all. Nobody knows it all. I'll be learning till the day I die, and that is what is exciting about cooking, about life. Now, if we go back to the question you said to me about how people, that their generation, that people don't cook so much today. The problem is they see cooking as aspirational. But I think what is happening today is, because it's now down to basic cookery rather than fine dining. Everybody was impressed fine dining will go there. But if people are going to learn to cook, it needs to be accessible.
Sure.
We need to be accessible, that people can do it at home, where people can feel, God, I can do that. That is great. I can really do that. And that's how we're going to encourage people to cook, is actually make it accessible, tasty, exciting, and make people want to do it when they go away. And that's the only way we'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, I popped into Tesco's yesterday, and it's a little bit sad because there's all this lovely produce, but the biggest aisles are the ready prepared meals.
Yeah.
And that's. I interviewed another chef a year or two ago, and I asked him what was his favourite bit of equipment, and he said the table. And he said it's the most underused piece of equipment in any kitchen or house.
I would agree with that, because a lot of people eat off their knees in front of the telly. Now,
watching your programme.
now the problem is, the problem is, if people do that, then they're not engaging in conversation. No. The wonderful thing about food is that food is a vehicle to bring people together.
Oh, very much so.
It is a place where you can engage in conversation, so you can find out what the children have done for the week, or what you've done for the week, or what exciting is happening in the next week. But you can it's all about relationships and building relationships, and you do that round a table. That's when you do it. You don't do it.
It's a common thing with all of the chefs.
Yeah. You don't do it standing up. You don't doing something else. You concentrate on what's going on, and the only thing that can do that is the table.
One last question, because I know you've got to go and do some work. But what's Rosemary Schrager's favourite meal? I know it's a question you've probably been asked 100 times. What does Rosemary Schrager cook for herself?
Now that's interesting. Now that's another question that people don't ever ask me.
Oh, good, I'm pleased about that.
No, because normally it's what's my favourite meal with the family.
What does Schrager? Yes, okay, we'll go back. What does Rosemary Schrager cook for herself?
Do you know what I love? I tell you, I love. Now wait for this. I love crispy bacon, fried up with a tin of baked beans into the crispy bacon, and then put into baked potato. And that's what I call pure comfort food.
That's interesting, because I will cook bacon in the frying pan. I don't let it go too crispy, but when it's nearly ready, I then tip the beans into the frying pan and cook that in the bacon juices.
That's what.
That's exactly what
but
you do.
leave the bacon in.
Yeah.
Always leave the bacon in.
And then say, oh gosh, this. But going back to just to recap on my mother's from French North Africa. She came over at the end of the war with my dad.
Okay.
She learned to cook from her mother.
Yes, you see.
And again,
yes,
I know it's a cliche. The story's been told thousands of times. When I was a little boy, I was being sent up to Boots to buy the olive oil in because that's the only place you could buy it. And I learned to cook. I'm a reasonable cook.
Yes.
And I learned from watching my mother.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. But when I say to you, do you love cooking?
Oh, very much so.
Well, you see, that's the key as well.
Yeah.
Because I think you've got to enjoy doing it. Because there are a lot of people, and why should they? They don't enjoy doing it.
But I don't. One of the things, if you, I mean, I did a really nice one last night, but once I've cooked the meal, I actually then struggle to eat it. I get the pleasure of cooking it, I get the pleasure of putting it in front of my wife or my family or my friends, but then, I'd rather sit and watch them, Mind you, I'm picking all the time.
But you see, that's a giver. Cooks are givers.
Yeah.
You will find the cooks who really are passionate about cooking is they want to share it with everyone, and that's totally normal. What you do is normal.
Oh, excellent.
So that's not a normal. But you know what? I'd start enjoying the food if I was you. I think if you enjoy it as much as they
I'm really pleased I found anybody else that's... I've for years, I wait till nobody's looking. I thought it was a bit of a Philistine.
No, that's normal.
Good.
No, very normal.
Okay. Rosemary, I'm very grateful for your time. I know it's a busy day. Are you going to have a chance to wander around after?
I certainly am. This is, the one thing I love.
It's terrific. I've been to, as you probably have, quite a few food festivals.
Yeah.
This is terrific.
Well, I love food festivals because this is an opportunity where you can get to meet local people, but also find some really great produce, and also that you could use. I mean, I found some wonderful stuff there going around the festivals and doing things. It is fabulous. So you always sort of find something that could be useful. I've got a wonderful product which I love is sunflower oil.
Oh yes,
which is delicious. So, but this is really special stuff. Yeah. And then we've got the. I love the Yachty vinegars.
Oh yes, yeah.
I love Yachty vinegars. I mean, really, really delicious again. All sorts of things.
Great stuff. I've been
and I think, all those sort of things. I think it's really. It's pumpkin oil. Sorry, I said something like pumpkin oil. It is the most delicious thing you could ever have. Pumpkin oil. Oh my gosh.
Go and say hello to Paul Barlow Heel on Cotswold Baking. His cakes are terrific.
Okay.
And then there are two ladies. I think she's Rosemary. The Supper Circle. They've opened a little pop-up restaurant.
Okay.
And but there's just so much out there to see.
Well, that's it. So I'm going to go.
Nobody's selling Banbury cakes. I can't believe it.
Oh well, that's a shame. So you got this locally from?
I buy them. Well, they're made in Shipping Norton, but I live in a little village just north of Cropredy, and they sell them in the village shop to all the people on the canal boat.
So special. Well, I shall embrace it. I might even try and make them myself.
No, well, so they're not. Well, if you can't make them, there's no hope for any of us. Rosemary, exactly. I'm very grateful. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, that was my very good friend Rosemary Schrager. As you can probably tell from some of the comments in that conversation, that was recorded back in August at the Banbury Food Fair. But as Deborah said just before we played that recording, there was a little bit of a local connection again with the Pigotts boys on the Great Family Cook-Off or whatever it's called. Right, we've got about 12 minutes left to go, and I'm going to rest again and hand back to... this is really good.
This is really why you have us in.
Yeah.
So you can take a break.
Hand back to Deborah and Patrick. I have no idea what they're going to talk about this time.
Well, I didn't actually know what we were going to talk talk about until just now, because while the Rosemary interview was playing, Patrick said something which struck me, which is apparently rums. I mean, we're not over the gin thing yet. There's gins everywhere, gin tastings, gin parties, gin societies. It's Britain. It will always be around. Yeah. But apparently the next big thing is rums, which both Patrick and I have visceral reactions to because of drinking incidents in
mistakes in our teenage years.
Yes, in our youth, which we won't get into. But what about them has attracted the attention?
Well, the thing about rums is that rums are in their own way as varied and just flat out varied as gins. I mean, gins are varied because it's all about the botanicals.
Well, there's light rum and there's dark rum, but
there's dark rums. You can have sherry cask aged rums. You can have smoked rums.
Smoked rum.
Yes, yeah. You can have pineapple infused rum, which is actually a really rather lovely thing.
But wouldn't that make it even? Rum is rather sweet. I mean,
rum essentially comes from cane sugar.
Right. So to infuse it with pineapple.
Well, no, pineapple's very tangy and acidic, actually. So what you're wanting from the pineapple is the tang. Is the tang.
Tang. Okay.
To balance it. And different countries throughout the Caribbean and South America, the Brazilians have their own relative of rum called cachaça, which is a very lovely thing indeed. They all have their own traditions and their own ways of making rum, and so there's because there's whites and there's darks, and they're aged for different periods of times and stuff like that. There's a great variety in flavor, so you can really. It's not like vodkas where the point of vodka is to be as smooth as possible. Really,
the point of vodka is to mix it with something else or to infuse it with something.
Whereas rum and gin and a good whiskey, the point is the spirit itself and the flavors that you can experience with them.
Can I just interrupt? Whereas gin can be made anywhere, is rum specified? Do we distill rum in this country, or is it just out in the Caribbean?
I suppose you could, but I'm not sure you
access to all that sugar.
And you get into. I mean, gin has a very specific history here in Britain, about which the British are, quite frankly, a little selective. as the same goes for rum, but because that comes with a very, very bleak history of its own. But it's more of a cultural thing. Yeah, I mean I think that you have countries where rum is made, and it's the indigenous population that has taken over the making of that rum. Yes, I suppose you could make rum here, but why would you?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that has made me slightly cautious, but I'm sure there isn't any left now, but when, it was commonplace back in the day, if for Nelson, for example, when he died on the ship, they pickled him in rum.
Well,
and it always worried me that they bottled it when they'd taken him out.
And did they drink it? Yeah, there's various versions of that story.
Yeah.
And so it's quite possibly not true.
No.
Some people say brandy and then
It
would be a measure of the greatness of the man if they'd wasted that much brandy.
Yeah. They still dish out a tot of rum on a Majesty's ships.
Yes, I believe they do.
And a tot is a pretty generous measure.
It is.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, as what the late great Clarissa Dixon Wright once intoned on Two Fat Ladies, speaking of the British Navy, rum, sodomy, and the lash.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So rum is.
But the thing about rum is that rum is also is really good for use in desserts and stuff like that. Adding a dash of rum to a caramel, adding a dash of rum to ice cream, and fruitcakes.
Yeah. Well, I will frequently cook with it.
Yeah.
The
other spirit that
I didn't realize you could infuse it with stuff. So I may try something like that.
The other spirit that is starting to get popular here in Britain is bourbon. Bourbon is very much on the up as well.
Yeah.
And by bourbon, we don't mean Jack Daniels.
Don't look at me. I know damn well what bourbon is.
Yeah, really good bourbons.
I grew up with my dad.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. It's its own thing. It's not. Doesn't serve anyone's interest to say is it better or worse than Scotch. People will be.
No, it's a different thing.
It's a different thing. A fine bourbon has its equal merits to a good single malt.
When I first came down to Banbury, Upper Hayford was still very active, and Banbury was crawling with big American cars, so everybody knew somebody that worked on the base, because you got some nice food, some nice parties, and whenever you invited them round, they always bought a bottle of bourbon, but it was either Maker's Mark or Four Roses. I think.
Four Roses or Maker's Mark.
Yeah,
Maker's Mark. Yeah. Jack Daniels is the one that's sort of paved the way here in the UK, and Jack Daniels has become incredibly popular.
Well, they are branding geniuses.
They're branding
It has
geniuses.
little to do with the booze itself and everything to do with the really good marketing department.
We had a guest on the music show a couple of weeks ago, Neil Parker, who is the landlord of the Dolphin Inn at Middleton Cheney, who has two claims to fame. He is the drummer in a ska tribute band, the Ska Electrics, but he also has the world's largest collection of Jack Daniels and memorabilia, including tattoos, matching tattoos on each thigh. You see him.
Is a tattoo really memorabilia?
You see him driving a London taxi around Banbury.
Is that him? Okay, I've seen
with
it
all the Jack Daniels logo.
Wow.
He's been guest of honour. Is it Lynchburg?
Yeah, it's Lynchburg.
Yeah, 5 times he's been there as guest of honour.
I've been to Lynchburg
and you
once,
go
that's
in.
enough.
You go. It's worth going into the Dolphin at Middleton Cheney, just by the traffic light. It's unbelievable the stuff he's got in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted.
Everybody has their thing. That's fine. But then I'm not a huge bourbon fan. I mean, I know about it because my dad drinks bourbon.
I love a good bourbon.
And and anyone who subsequently met my dad knows that's one of the first questions that he asks: what brand of bourbon do you drink, and how much would you like? Because it's all in the house.
Yeah.
I mean, if Jack Daniels is what brings it over here, that's fine. It's the gateway bourbon.
Drugs,
it's the gateway bourbon.
Yeah.
But somebody was talking about the Americanization of language and that the changes in language was how Americanization happened. And I said, no, Americanization happens via McDonald's and Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
We all know that, and apparently Jack Daniels.
And Jack Daniels.
There you go.
This is something that Deborah's just mentioned. One of the huge events that got massive coverage on Facebook up here in Banbury was McDonald's closing.
Oh,
yeah.
God, yeah. One of the McDonald's in town closed.
The big one,
the wailing
the main
and
one.
the keening and the gnashing of teeth, like it's actual food. There's other McDonald's still in town. It was the franchisee.
There's 2 others, yeah.
Is this the one by the town hall?
Spot on,
Yeah.
Right, okay.
The franchisee's retiring. That was it.
McDonald's will not allow a franchisee to sell to another franchisee.
So-
they have to go back into the pot and pay full price and start all over again.
So he retired. It wasn't that suddenly people were not eating McDonald's. There was
No,
always
it's good.
people.
Yeah.
Though they did run out of fries on their last day.
Well, yeah.
People
but they
were
didn't
posting.
They didn't hang around. Once they sold that last burger, that sign
Oh, they
was down
shut.
in 30 minutes.
Yeah, they shut at 11 o'clock, and it was all boarded up and the signs down by midnight.
Wow.
And a rumour has it's going to be a Cafe Nero, which I find hard to believe.
But people were getting really, really upset, and I thought, if a fast food outlet, whether it's McDonald's or Burger King or Subway, if the closing of this fast food outlet upsets you so much, take a good long hard look in the mirror. Get your priorities in order.
People, and unfortunately, it's reflected on Banbury because we've had
the Queen owns one of the other McDonald's.
We've had a Wetherspoons closed down and a McDonald's closed down, and people said, well, if Wetherspoons and McDonald's
Is
can't
this not
make
a sign of gentrification?
It is, and you know what?
Yeah.
Losing a Wetherspoons and a
These
McDonald's,
are bad
that's a bad thing?
It isn't a bad thing in the broader sense, but it is if you want the town to stay exactly as it was, which some people.
Yeah.
But see, the town is evolving into a commuter town, whether everybody likes it or not. So you might as well get on board with it. All those new houses are.
You're going to have an effect.
Yeah.
Next time you go back across to the US of A, bring back a few packets of tumbleweed seeds. I reckon we'll make a fortune.
Yeah, but that's the joy of tumbleweeds. They don't grow; they just happen.
Yeah.
It's such a shame because it's Old Town. We mentioned Old Town where John's pub is. Old Town is terrific.
A lot of new shops there recently.
And of course, we've had the other thing that's happened is the Castle Quay 2 development. It hasn't been shelved. There's been a change of ownership. The development company has merged with somebody else.
It's up in the air. Nobody's really 100% sure what's going on. So, but there's still lots of shops. Shops are opening, things like that. People have plenty of choices of things they can buy.
We could have
places to eat.
We could have fantastic, and this is where they missed it with Castle Quay one. We could have had fantastic canal frontage in Banbury, shops, clubs.
Yeah, they turned that the wrong way around.
They built it
I think the
backwards.
expression you're searching for is "arse about face." So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
You're the host, so you can say
didn't.
it.
I mean, having been
Yeah, yeah.
taking the back route, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Having entered Banbury through the back way.
Through the back passage. I did
Hi,
wonder
Stuart.
why does everything face away from
The canal,
The canal.
which is-
That surely.
Yeah.
I mean, you should be designing your mall so that your eateries are on the canal.
Shocking. How,
Yeah, I mean-
how very dare you?
One more step, people. Think one more step.
I can't believe it. We've got about 20 seconds left. So Patrick,
See, I told you we could fill it up.
Patrick, really grateful for you coming up again.
Thank you.
Look forward
Very
to seeing
much
you
for
on
having
December
me. I've
4th.
enjoyed myself
Amongst the
thoroughly.
many things we will be doing, we will be tasting Mackay's Dundee marmalade. They're sending
yes,
us
if you wish
8
to come back on the
yes,
4th,
please.
there you go.
Yeah.
And Deborah, I'm sure we'll speak before next December.
Sure we will.
If not this afternoon.
I
So
will.
again,
Sure we will.
thank you very much.
All
Thank
right.
you both.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.